Just take it, she whispered, pressing the warm bowl into his trembling hands. My little girl and I will be fine. But they wouldn't be. And somewhere deep in her chest, Clara Bennett already knew it. That bowl of soup was the last thing she had in this world. The last warmth, the last hope. And she gave it to a stranger bleeding in the snow, a man covered in leather and tattoos wearing the most feared patch in America. If you've ever given everything you had left to someone who needed it more, drop your city in the comments below. And if you're new here, subscribe and stay with us until the very end. This story will change the way you see people forever. The temperature had dropped to 11 degrees by the time the last piece of firewood burned down to nothing. Clara Bennett didn't own a thermometer. She didn't need one. She could feel 11 degrees in the marrow of her teeth, in the skin behind her ears, in the way her fingers stopped hurting an hour ago and started going numb instead. Numbness was worse than pain. She knew that now. Pain meant your body was still fighting. Numbness meant it had started negotiating with. The cold started making quiet little arrangements about what it was willing to give up. She pulled the blanket tighter around Lily's shoulders and listened to her daughter breathe. Lily was 6 years old, and she slept the way 6-year-olds sleep when they don't fully understand what danger is deeply, completely, with her mouth open slightly and her small fist curled under her chin. Clara watched her in the dim orange glow of the camp stove's last flicker and felt the specific kind of love that doesn't have a name. The kind that sits in your sternum like a stone, heavy and permanent and aching. They were living in a 2003 Ford Taurus with a cracked rear window patched with duct tape and a heating system that had given out 17 days ago on I-94 somewhere between Dearborn and Desperation. The car was parked under the Buchanan Street overpass on Detroit's east side. Not parked the way people park when they're stopping briefly. Park the way people park when there is nowhere left to go. Clara had been here for 23 days. She had tried to count them, at first marking them mentally the way prisoners are supposed to mark cell walls. But somewhere around day 14, the counting started to feel like something cruel she was doing to herself. So she stopped. She was 34 years old. 8 months ago, she had owned a house. Not a beautiful house, not a house anyone would have photographed for a magazine, but a real house, a 3-bedroom on Maplewood with a yard that flooded every spring and a kitchen where the overhead light buzzed faintly unless you smacked the switch just right. A house where Lily had a room with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that her father had stuck up there one Saturday afternoon, standing on the bed in his socks, pressing each little star into place with his thumb, while Lily directed him with the authority of a tiny general. More over there, Daddy. No more over there. Yes, ma'am. Marcus Bennett had been 38 years old when the doctors found the mass in his pancreas. He had been 39 when he died. The whole thing from diagnosis to funeral had taken 11 months. Clara sometimes thought about how that was almost exactly 1 year, how life had a kind of dark symmetry to it, sometimes a precision that felt less like coincidence and more like something being deliberately cruel. The hospital bills came before the condolence cards had finished arriving. That was something nobody prepared you for, the speed of the financial system compared to the speed of grief. Grief moves slow. Grief takes years. The bank did not take years. The bank took 4 months. She had tried. Clara needed anyone who had watched her during those months to understand that she had tried. She had filed for every assistance program she could find, had sat in every waiting room, had filled out every form with the particular kind of humiliation that comes from having to describe your life in boxes and check boxes. She had applied for 47 jobs. She had gotten 3 callbacks. She had gotten 0 offers because when you list your last employer as your husband's caretaker and your available hours as unpredictable due to childcare and your address is currently in transition, people stop calling back. She had sold the furniture first, then the electronics, then Marcus's tools from the garage, each one feeling like an amputation. She had moved into her sister's apartment for 6 weeks until her sister's landlord threatened eviction over the lease terms, and her sister, crying, had asked her to leave. The Taurus had been Marcus's car. It was the last thing she had that was his, and she had not been able to make herself sell it, even when selling it might have bought her another month somewhere. Maybe that had been a mistake. Clara had made so many decisions in the last year that she no longer trusted herself to know which ones were mistakes and which ones were the only things keeping her sane. Now the car was her house, the overpass was her neighborhood, and the camp stove between the front seats was her kitchen. She had exactly one thing left to cook. The pot of chicken soup had been made from a rotisserie chicken she'd found still warm in the markdown cart at the Kroger on Michigan Avenue, $2.14, and a box of egg noodles and a fistful of carrots she'd gotten at the food pantry on Tuesday. She had made it carefully the way you make things when you know they have to last. She had rationed it across 2 days. Tonight was the last of it. She heated the soup slowly, watching the surface of it begin to move, small, lazy bubbles rising and breaking. The smell of it filled the car, warm and dense and real, in a way that felt almost violent against the cold. Lily stirred in the back seat. "Mama? I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep." "Is it soup?" "Yes, I'm heating it up." "Can I have some?" "In a minute, let it get warm." Lily made a small, satisfied sound and pulled the blanket back over her head. Clara watched her and felt the stone in her sternum grow heavier. Tomorrow there would be nothing. She had been running the numbers in her head all day the way she always did now, compulsively, hopelessly, and the numbers came out the same every time. Tomorrow was empty. She had $4 and some change left in her wallet, and the food pantry didn't open again until Friday, and it was Tuesday night, and she did not know how she was going to feed her daughter breakfast. She was just reaching for the ladle when the world outside exploded. It was not a figure of speech. It was a sound so sudden and so massive that Clara's whole body seized. She grabbed the pot with both hands to keep it from tipping, burning her palm on the rim, and Lily shot upright in the back seat with her eyes wide and her blanket clutched to her chest. "Mama, stay here." Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Stay into the car. Do not open that door." What was that? "I don't know. Stay here." She already knew she wasn't going to stay in the car herself. She told herself it was because she needed to know if there was danger coming toward them. She told herself it was survival instinct, situational awareness, common sense. All of that was probably true. But the truth underneath the truth was simpler. When you have been living in a parking spot under a bridge for 23 days, you develop a complicated relationship with your own fear. After a while, not knowing feels worse than knowing. She opened the car door. The cold hit her like a wall. 11 degrees and a wind coming off the river that found every gap in her jacket. She pulled it closed at the collar and stepped out onto the concrete and looked toward the sound. He was maybe 40 feet away, half hidden in the shadow at the edge of the overpass where the streetlight didn't reach. A motorcycle on its side in the snow, one wheel still spinning, slow, the headlight cracked and aimed uselessly at the ground. And beside it, beneath it, almost a man. Clara's first thought was that he was dead. He was that still. He was lying with one arm pinned under the bike and his legs at an angle that looked wrong, and the snow around him was spreading dark in a way she recognized from Marcus's last weeks in the hospital when the nurses changed his IV lines. She didn't decide to move toward him. She moved toward him the way you move toward a sound in another room when your child makes it without deliberation, without calculation, purely on the signal from whatever part of you exists before thought. She was 15 feet away when she saw the patch. It was on the back of his leather vest over a black hoodie, and even in the dim, fractured light from the overpass lamps, she could read it clearly. Hell's Angels. White background, red letters, the death's head, insignia above it. She had grown up in Detroit. She knew what that patch meant. She had heard stories her whole life, the kind of stories that get told in Detroit, the same way weather gets discussed as a permanent feature of the landscape, something you navigate around, something you do not engage with if you value your safety. She stopped. Her breath made clouds in the frozen air. She stood there and looked at him. His face was turned partly toward her. He was a big man, she could see that even lying down. Well over 6 feet broad through the shoulders, gray at the temples, and in the beard the kind of face that had been lived in hard for a long time. His lips had gone bluish. His exposed hand, the one not pinned under the bike, was curled against the snow with the fingers stiff and beginning to purple. He made a sound, not the word, not quite a groan, something smaller than both of those. A sound that a person makes when they are still fighting but running out of fight. Clara looked at him and thought about Lily in the back seat with her blanket and her $4 and some change and the empty day coming tomorrow. Then she turned around and went back to the car. Lily's face appeared at the window pressed against the glass. Clara opened the door and reached past her daughter and picked up the pot of soup. "Mama, that's our dinner." "I know, Mama." "Lily." She said it quiet and level, and Lily went silent because she was 6 and she was smart And she already understood, in the way children understand things before they have words for them, that there are moments when you stop asking questions. I need you to stay in the car and keep the door locked. Can you do that for me? Is somebody hurt? Yes. Are they really hurt? Yes, baby, really hurt. Lily looked at her for a moment with Marcus's eyes, that same dark, steady quality, that same way of looking at you that felt like being read. Okay, she said finally. I'll stay. Clara locked the door from the inside using Lily's hand and heard the click, and then walked back across the concrete with the soup pot held in both hands, the warmth of it soaking into her burned palm. She crouched down beside him. Up close, he was worse. She could see a gash along his hairline that had painted half his face dark red, and the angle of his left shoulder was wrong in a way that meant something was broken. His breathing was shallow and fast, the kind of breathing that isn't actually moving enough air. Hey, she said it firmly, not gently. Gentle doesn't work on people who are going under. Hey, open your eyes. Nothing. I said, open your eyes. She put her hand flat on his cheek. His skin was so cold it shocked her. You open your eyes right now. His eyelids moved, slowly with tremendous effort, like something being hauled up from depth. He looked at her. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, and for a moment they didn't focus. She could see him, not quite finding her, his gaze sliding around the edges of consciousness. Then he focused. That's right, she said. Stay with me. You're not done yet. His lips moved. Don't talk. Can you tell me your name? He tried again. Hank. The word came out thick and blurred. Hank. Okay, Hank, I'm Clara. I'm going to give you something hot to drink, and I need you to stay awake while I do it. Can you do that? He looked at her with those gray eyes. Something moved through them, confusion maybe, disbelief, like he could not quite process what was happening, what this woman was doing here, what she was holding. You, he started. Don't talk, she said again. Drink. She got one hand behind his head and lifted him carefully, angling him just enough, and she put the edge of the pot to his lips and tipped it slowly, and he drank. Not gracefully, the first swallow came back up, and he coughed it out, and she held him through it and tried again. The second swallow stayed down. And the third. She could feel the warmth leaving the pot as it entered him, could feel the weight of what she was doing, not just the physical weight of holding him up, but the other weight, the weight of tomorrow, the weight of $4 and some change, and an empty morning and a 6-year-old girl with her father's eyes. She kept her hand behind his head and kept the pot tilted, and she did not let herself think about any of it. He drank. When he'd taken about half the pot, he stopped and pulled back slightly, and she lowered him, and he lay looking up at the underside of the overpass with his chest moving differently, deeper, slower, more like a person and less like a machine running out of fuel. You're going to be okay, Clara said, but I can't lift that bike off you by myself. Where's your phone? He closed his eyes for a moment. She thought he was going under again and said his name sharply, and he opened them. Inside pocket, he said. His voice was still rough, but the blur was starting to clear. Left side. She found it and pressed it into his good hand. Call someone. I can. Call someone now, Hank. I mean it. Right now, while you can still think straight. He looked at her again with that unfocused disbelief. Then slowly he moved his thumb across the screen. She watched his face as he made the call. Watched the moment the call connected. Watched something shift behind his eyes when the voice came through on the other end. Something that might have been relief or might have been something harder to name. It's me, he said. I'm down, under the Buchanan overpass east side. A pause. Yeah, another pause longer. Just get here. He dropped the phone against his chest and looked at her. They're coming, he said. Good. They stayed like that for a moment, him on the ground, her crouched beside him, the steam from the soup pot fading in the cold air between them. She could hear the wind off the river. She could hear a distant siren, probably unrelated. She could hear Lily in the car. She had her window cracked a 1/4 inch, and Clara could hear her daughter humming something soft and tuneless, the way she did when she was trying not to be scared. That's your kid? Hank asked. Yes. He looked around slowly, and she could see him putting the picture together. The Ford Taurus, the overpass, the camp stove lights still glowing orange through the car window. You're living here. It wasn't a question. She didn't answer it like one. Yes, she said. He was quiet for a moment. He looked up at the underside of the overpass again, at the concrete above him streaked with the exhaust of years and years of passing traffic. That was your food, he said. That soup. Yes. All of it. Clara looked at him steadily. Yes. Something happened to his face. It was subtle and it was real, and it was the most human thing she had seen on a man's face in a very long time. His jaw tightened. His eyes went somewhere she couldn't follow. And she watched him try to put words to whatever had just happened inside him, and fail, and then give up trying, and just lie there with the failure of it written plainly across his features. Why, he finally said. It was a genuine question, not rhetorical. He actually wanted to know. Clara thought about it for a moment, not performing the thinking, actually doing it, actually looking for the honest answer. Then she said, because it was the right thing. He stared at her. That's it, he said. That's it. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, except there was nothing funny about any of it. He shook his head slowly, carefully, given the state of it. Lady, he said, do you know who I am? I know what your patch says. That doesn't scare you. Everything scares me right now, Clara said. Cold scares me. Hungry scares me. Watching my daughter go to sleep not knowing if she'll be warm enough, that scares me. You're a man who is about to freeze to death. That part I understand. Hank looked at her for a long time, those silver gray eyes moving over her face like he was reading something that had been written there without her knowledge. Hank Sullivan, he said finally. Clara Bennett. You said that. I know. He almost smiled, almost. Whatever was happening inside him was fighting with his face for control of it, and his face was losing. Your hand is burned, he said. She looked down. The palm she'd burned on the pot rim had blistered slightly. She'd stopped noticing it. I'm fine. You should, Hank. She said his name the same way she'd said Lily's, quietly, flatly, brooking no argument. I'm fine, stay awake. He stayed awake. The next 18 minutes were the strangest of Clara's life, and that was saying something because the last 8 months had contained moments she would not have believed were possible before they happened to her. She crouched beside this enormous injured biker on the concrete under a freeway overpass in 11-degree weather and talked to him not about anything in particular, not about the patch or the crash or what she was going to feed her daughter tomorrow. Just talk the way you talk to someone you're keeping alive, the way you talk when silence feels dangerous. She told him about Marcus, not the death of the man, how he made coffee wrong every single time, always too strong, always with the grounds floating in it, and she had nagged him about it for 7 years and would give anything for 1 cup of his terrible coffee right now. How he could fix anything mechanical. Cars, appliances, bicycles, anything, but could not hang a picture frame level to save his life. And their walls had been full of photographs, hung slightly wrong, and she had loved every single one. Hank listened. He didn't say much. He was in pain. She could see it in the set of his jaw, in the way he breathed through his nose when a wave of it moved through him. But he listened like listening was the most important thing he had to do right now. How old's your girl? He asked at one point. 6. She's tough, sitting in that car alone. She's tough, Clara agreed. She gets it from her father. You're not exactly soft yourself. Clara looked at him. I'm a woman sitting on a concrete slab in 11-degree weather next to a man I don't know because the alternative was watching him die. She paused. I don't know if that's tough or just practical. Those aren't different things, Hank said. She thought about that. No, she said. I guess they aren't. She heard them before she saw them. She had been listening for sirens, an ambulance maybe, or a police cruiser, but what she heard was different. It was deeper, plural. A collection of sounds that together made a low, rolling thunder that she felt in her sternum before she heard it clearly with her ears. Motorcycles. 3 of them came down the access road. First their headlights cutting through the dark, and then 4 more behind, and then the road was full of them. Clara stood up, her hand going automatically to her chest, her heart suddenly loud in her ears. The riders pulled up and killed their engines one by one, and in the sudden silence she could hear her own breathing. The first man off his bike was big, not as big as Hank, but close. He was wearing the same leather vest, the same patch, and his face had the look of someone who had been very calm for a very long time and was currently using all of that calm to stop himself from being something else. He looked at Hank on the ground, looked at the bike, looked at Clara. You called it in, he asked Hank. She called it in, Hank said. Get this bike off me, Billy. My shoulders. Yeah, I see it. The man named Billy was already moving, already signaling to two of the others, and in 30 seconds, three of them had lifted the motorcycle off Hank's arm with a precision that spoke of practice, not the practice of emergency, but the practice of people who are accustomed to taking care of each other. Clara stepped back. She stood at the edge of it and watched these men work, watched them check Hank's shoulder, watched one of them produce a first aid kit from a saddlebag, watched another already on his phone, already talking presumably about medical help, all of it happening fast and coordinated and completely focused. None of them looked at her. She took the empty soup pot and walked back toward the car. Lily had her face pressed to the glass again. Clara unlocked the door and got in and closed it and sat for a moment with her hands in her lap. Mama, Lily's voice was small and careful. Is he okay? I think so. His friends came. That's good. Yes. Mama, a pause. Are we going to be okay? Clara looked at the pot in her lap. She looked at the camp stove with its low orange flicker. She looked at her daughter's face in the rearview mirror. Those eyes, those specific eyes, and she made herself stay honest, which was the hardest thing, which was always the hardest thing. I don't know yet, she said, but we're here. We're warm enough, and we're together. That's where we start. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a child who has learned that some answers are the whole answer you're going to get. Okay, she said. That's okay. Clara reached back and found her daughter's hand in the dark and held it. Outside, she could hear the bikers working. She could hear voices, low, quick, purposeful. She could hear the sound of someone's boots on the concrete, and then another set, and then the beam of a flashlight swept briefly across the car's rear window. And then she heard the knock on the glass. It was the man named Billy. He was crouched slightly to be at window level, one hand up flat in the universal gesture of, I mean no harm. Clara rolled the window down 2 inches. Ma'am, his voice was flat and controlled. Hank says you gave him your food. Clara said nothing. That true, yes. Billy looked at her for a moment. Then he reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out something and held it toward the window. It was folded bills, Clara saw. Paper bills. No, she said immediately. Ma'am. No, I don't want money. Billy's jaw tightened slightly. It's not charity. It's for the food. You fed one of ours. That means nothing, Clara said, not unkindly. Flat the way she'd been flat all night, the way she'd learned to be flat. Because if you let yourself go anywhere near the edges of what you were feeling, you stopped being able to function, and you could not afford to stop being able to function. I didn't do it for payment. I don't want payment. I'm glad he's okay. That's enough. Billy stared at her. He had a hard face, not cruel, but hard the way faces get when they've been set against things for a long time. But something moved through it now that softened the hardness without eliminating it the way a fault line shifts imperceptible on the surface but definitive underneath. He put the money back in his pocket. All right, he said. Is he going to the hospital? Yeah, already called. Bus is on the way. Good. Billy straightened, started to turn away, then stopped, looked back. What's your name? He asked. Clara Bennett. He nodded once, slowly, the way people nod when they're filing something away. Thank you, Clara Bennett, he said. And then he walked back to his people, and she rolled up the window and sat in the dark with her daughter's hand in hers and listened to the motorcycles one by one leave the overpass until it was quiet again. Until the only sound was the wind off the river and the distant freeway and Lily's steady breathing behind her. The soup pot was empty. The camp stove flickered once more and then went out. Clara sat in the total dark and did not cry because there was no room for it. No space in her chest that wasn't already occupied by what tomorrow needed from her. She sat and she breathed and she held her daughter's hand and she let the dark be what it was. She had done the right thing. She believed that without reservation, without performance, without needing it to mean anything beyond itself. She had done the right thing, and now it was done, and tomorrow was still coming, and she still had no idea how she was going to face it. That was the whole truth of it. That was where she was. Outside under the Buchanan Street overpass, the snow kept falling soft and indifferent and beautiful in the way that things are beautiful when they don't care what they cost you. And inside the Ford Taurus, Clara Bennett stayed awake long after her daughter had gone back to sleep, watching the dark and thinking about nothing and everything and the specific weight of a soup pot going from full to empty in somebody else's hands. She did not know what she had set in motion. She did not know what was coming. She only knew the dark and the cold and the sound of Lily breathing and the strange bare feeling of a person who has given away the last thing they had and is still somehow still here. Still here. That would have to be enough. For now, that would have to be enough. The ambulance left without its siren on. Clara noticed that. She noticed it the way you notice small, strange things when your mind has gone quiet from exhaustion, not screaming through the night, just rolling away slow and steady, under the overpass lights, taking Hank Sullivan with it into the dark. Professional, unhurried. Like whatever emergency had existed here had been contained and filed and was now someone else's department. She sat in the Taurus and watched the taillights disappear and felt the particular emptiness that follows an adrenaline crash. Not peace, nothing as comfortable as peace, but a kind of hollow stillness where all the decisions have been made and the body hasn't caught up yet to the fact that it can stop bracing. Lily was asleep again, genuinely asleep this time, not the light, anxious sleep from before, but the deep kind, the kind where her face went completely slack and her breathing slowed to almost nothing and her fist uncurled against the seat. Clara watched her for a long moment and then looked at the camp stove sitting cold between the front seats. No heat, no food, no plan. She had known this was coming. She had known it for 3 days, had been running the math obsessively, the way broke people run math, not because the numbers change, but because the act of counting feels like doing something, feels like control even when it isn't. $4.62 in her wallet. The food pantry on Livernois didn't open until Friday. It was Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. Now she had lost exact track. That was 2 days. 2 days of nothing. She put her head back against the headrest and closed her eyes and let herself have 30 seconds of not thinking. Just 30. She had learned to do this to give herself small, deliberate breaks from the weight of it, the way you put down a heavy bag for a moment. Not because you're done carrying it, but because your arms need 30 seconds or they'll give out entirely. 28, 29, 30. She opened her eyes. The knock on the passenger window came so suddenly she flinched hard enough to hit her elbow on the door handle, and Lily stirred in the back but didn't wake, and Clara turned to find a face she hadn't seen before at the glass. A woman, 50s maybe. Short hair gone mostly silver, dark eyes that were direct without being hostile. She was wearing a leather vest identical to the ones the men had worn with the same patch on the back, and she had a paper bag in both hands held up at window level in that same gesture of, I mean no harm, that Billy had used. Clara stared at her. The woman said something, but Clara couldn't hear it through the glass. She gestured with the bag, not aggressively, just practically the way someone gestures when they want you to open the door and they don't have all night. Clara rolled the window down 2 inches. I'm Donna, the woman said. No last name, no preamble. I'm Hank's sister. I heard what you did. There's nothing to hear, Clara said. Sure there is. Donna held the bag out toward the window. This is food. For you and your little girl. Don't tell me no. I already told the other one no. I know. Billy told me. Donna's mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile. He also told me you meant it, so I'm not offering you money. This is food. You can't say no to food for your kid on a principle. That's not how principles work when you've got a 6-year-old. Clara looked at the bag. She could smell it even through the partial window, something hot, something dense and real. Her stomach contracted. How do you know she's 6? Clara asked. Hank told me. He remembered. Donna's voice went quieter on that last word. He remembers everything you said. More than you'd think a man in his condition would remember. She held the bag closer to the window. Take the food, Clara. The sound of her own name in a stranger's mouth, not unkind, not transactional, just her name, just said plainly, did something to Clara's chest that she was not prepared for. She felt the edges of the 30-second break she'd given herself start to fray. She took the bag. Thank you, she said, and she said it quickly because she didn't trust what was behind it. He's going to be okay, Donna said. In case you were wondering, broken collarbone, 6 stitches on his head, mild hypothermia. They said another 30 minutes out there, and it would have been different. Clara nodded. He knows that, Donna said. Hank knows exactly what 30 minutes means. I'm glad he's okay. Are you? It wasn't a question, not quite. Donna was studying her with those direct dark eyes. You don't know him. That's true. You didn't know him at all when you gave him everything you had. Also true. Donna was quiet for a moment. The wind moved between them and Clara felt it against her face through the 2-inch gap. My brother has been writing 22 years, Donna said. In those 22 years, I don't think I could count on both hands the number of people who did something for him without wanting something back. She paused. He's going to want to fix this. There's nothing to fix. He won't see it that way. With respect, Clara said, what Hank Sullivan sees or doesn't see isn't really my concern. I'm glad he's alive. I hope he heals fast. That's the end of it for me. Donna looked at her for a long moment. You really mean that? Donna said slowly. Yes. That might be the most dangerous thing about you, Donna said. And before Clara could ask what that meant, she had stepped back from the window and turned and walked toward the last remaining motorcycle at the edge of the overpass and started it up and was gone. Clara sat with the paper bag in her lap and listened to the engine sound fade. She looked inside the bag. Someone had packed it with care, not just thrown things in, but actually thought about it. A thermos of what turned out to be coffee when she opened it, still genuinely hot. 2 portions of what looked like real food, the kind that came from someone's actual kitchen, wrapped in foil. A Ziploc bag with crackers and peanut butter and 3 tangerines. At the bottom, wrapped separately in a paper towel, a small container of cut-up fruit with a plastic fork taped to the lid. She sat holding the container of cut fruit, and something happened that she had told herself was not going to happen, had actively prevented from happening through sheer force of function for the last 6 hours, and for about 45 seconds she cried. Not dramatically, not the kind of crying that relieves anything. Just the specific, quiet crying of a person who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has just been handed briefly something light. Then she stopped, wiped her face with the back of her wrist, poured coffee into the thermos cap, and drank it. She would eat in the morning. She needed to stay sharp tonight. But even as she made that decision, she was already unwrapping one of the foil portions, just to know what was in it, and the smell that came out was chicken and rice, and something herbed and warm, and she ate half of it, sitting up in the driver's seat in the dark, and it was the best thing she had tasted in weeks, and she hated how much she needed it to be. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. The cold had settled back into the car within an hour of the camp stove going out, and without the heater, it was a slow, grinding cold that didn't spike or shock, but simply accumulated, degree by degree. The way debt accumulates, the way grief accumulates, through consistent pressure applied over time. She pulled every blanket they had over herself and Lily, who had migrated in her sleep from the back seat to pressed against Clara's side, one small arm across her mother's ribs. Clara lay there and stared at the underside of the overpass and thought about Donna's last words. That might be the most dangerous thing about you. She didn't understand it. She turned it over and looked at it from different angles and still didn't understand it, and eventually she decided that understanding it wasn't necessary right now, that it was the kind of thing you file under things I will think about when I have the bandwidth, which was a filing cabinet, in Clara's mind that had gotten very full in the last 8 months. She slept, badly, in 1-hour increments with the cold waking her each time. At 7 in the morning, she woke to the sound of Lily saying "Mama" in a tone that was not alarmed but was specific. The tone that meant something requires your attention, and she opened her eyes and found Lily sitting up and pointing at the windshield. There was a man outside the car, not close. He was standing maybe 20 feet back, leaning against a concrete pillar with his arms crossed and his collar up against the cold. He was wearing the vest. Clara did not recognize him from the night before. He was younger than Billy and Hank, mid-30s maybe, with a close-cropped beard and the particular posture of someone who has been standing watch for a while and has made his peace with it. As Clara sat up, he looked directly at the car and gave a single nod. Not threatening, not demanding, just acknowledging. "Who's that?" Lily said. "I don't know." "Is he watching us?" "Yes." "Why?" Clara looked at the man. He had looked away again, was looking out at the access road with that same patient, watchful posture. "I think he's making sure we're okay," she said, and saying it out loud made it stranger, not less strange. She had no framework for this. She had no part of her mental architecture designed to house the concept of a Hells Angels member standing guard over her and her daughter in a Detroit overpass at 7 in the morning because her giving away her last bowl of soup had apparently set something in motion that she didn't yet understand. That's nice, Lily said. The simplicity of being six, the uncomplicated ability to accept a thing as what it is without needing a full accounting. Yes, Clara said, that's nice. She opened the car door. The cold hit her and she breathed through it and walked toward the man. He watched her come. Morning, he said when she was close enough. Morning, I'm Clara. I know, I'm Eddie. Did someone ask you to be here? Billy asked me to keep an eye out overnight. I picked up the tail end of the shift around 4. Overnight, Clara repeated. Someone was here all night. Yes, ma'am. She stood with that for a moment. You didn't have to. We know we didn't have to. Eddie looked at her steadily. He had a quality about him that she was starting to recognize as a pattern in these people, a specific kind of directness, the kind that comes not from aggression, but from having decided some time ago to stop spending energy on indirection. We wanted to. Hank would have wanted to. That's how it works. How what works? When someone does right by us, Eddie said simply. Clara didn't have a response to that. She stood in the cold and looked at this young man who had spent the night on concrete watching over her family, and she felt something move through her that was too complicated to name and too close to the surface to examine safely. Thank you, she said finally. You're welcome. He pushed off the pillar. I'm going to head out, but there will be someone around today. Just so you know. You don't need to do that. No, Eddie agreed pleasantly. We don't. And he walked to his motorcycle and put it in gear and left, and Clara stood alone in the cold and watched him go. She went back to the car and helped Lily with the breakfast from the bag, the crackers and peanut butter. 1 tangerine, the cut fruit. Lily ate with the focused seriousness of a child who is hungry and knows it and isn't bothering to pretend otherwise. Clara had the other half of the chicken and rice from last night, cold now, but still substantial, still real. Mama, Lily said around a mouthful of cracker, are we going to stay here forever? No, Clara said. Where are we going to go? I'm working on it. You always say that, because I'm always working on it. Lily accepted this, ate her tangerine segment by segment with mathematical precision. Then what if we can't? Clara looked at her daughter, at the seriousness of that small face, at the question that a 6-year-old should not be asking, that a 6-year-old should not need to know how to ask, that a 6-year-old was asking because her world had made it necessary. Then we figure out something else, Clara said. We always figure out something else. Have we ever not figured out something else? Lily thought about this honestly, the way children think when they're actually reviewing the record rather than just agreeing to be comforted. No, she admitted. Right. But this is the hardest one. Yes, Clara said. This is the hardest one. She had 3 things she needed to do today. Get to the public library on Woodward. It opened at 9, had heat, had computers, had bathrooms where she could clean them both up properly. Apply for the Emergency Housing Assistance Program through the county, which she'd started an application for 2 weeks ago, but hadn't been able to finish because the process required documents she'd had to track down. And call the number that the social worker at the food pantry had given her 3 weeks ago, a housing nonprofit that supposedly had emergency placement, a number she had not called because calling it would mean saying the thing out loud to an official person, and something in her had needed more time before she did that. She was out of time. She knew it. This was the day she stopped needing more time. She had gathered their things and was about to start the car when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for a moment. Unknown numbers were never good news. Unknown numbers were debt collectors mostly had been for months. She had gotten very good at a particular variety of steeling herself before answering. She answered. Clara Bennett. The voice was male, not aggressive, businesslike. Yes. This is Griffin Mace. I'm the president of the Detroit chapter. The silence that followed was 2 seconds long and felt much longer. Of the Hells Angels, she said. That's right. She looked at Lily, who was brushing cracker crumbs off her lap with great concentration. How did you get my number? Hank had it. He asked the hospital to let him make calls this morning. First one he made was to me. Second was to his sister. A pause. He told me what you did. Mr. Mace. Griffin, she exhaled. I appreciate the food that was sent last night and the man who stayed. I genuinely do. But I'm not looking for anything. I made a choice, and I'm glad I made it, and I know, Griffin said. I know that. Hank made that very clear. His voice had a quality to it, measured, deliberate, the voice of a man who has been in enough situations to understand the value of choosing words carefully. I'm not calling to offer you something you don't want. I'm calling because I want to understand something. Clara waited. Hank said you knew who he was, said you saw the patch. Yes. And you still helped him. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Why? She had answered this question once already, 12 hours ago on a concrete slab in 11-degree weather. She gave Griffin Mace the same answer she had given Hank Sullivan. Because it was the right thing. He was quiet for so long she thought the call had dropped. Then he said, you know what most people do when they see that patch and somebody's down? I can guess. They walk the other direction. Fast. His voice was flat and factual, not bitter, just reporting. In 23 years of writing, I could count on one hand the number of times a civilian walked toward one of ours in trouble. He paused again. You walked toward him. With soup. It was what I had. Yes, Griffin said. That's the part. Clara did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. I'd like to come and talk to you, Griffin said. Today, if that works. Not to give you anything, not to make anything a transaction. Just to talk. One conversation. Clara's instincts ran a quick, cold calculation. The instincts that had kept her alive and functional for 8 months of impossible terrain. She ran the variables the way she ran the money math, not because the outcome was certain, but because the act of running it was what kept you from being foolish. A motorcycle club president wanted to meet her. She was living under a bridge with a 6-year-old. She had no leverage, no allies, no institutional protection. The same club had spent the night guarding her without being asked, had sent food, had sent Hank's sister. None of those gestures had carried a price. None of them had carried any implication she could identify. She thought about Donna's direct dark eyes, about Eddie's matter-of-fact posture against the pillar, about Billy reaching through the window with money and then putting it back when she said no and not making an argument out of it. All right, she said. What time? 10 o'clock. I can come to you. I'll be at the public library on Woodward. I need to use their computers. A brief pause. We can use their computers, Griffin said. My son's a paralegal. He's been trying to help me with some property stuff, and I am not good at... He stopped himself. That's not relevant. 10 o'clock, the library. 10 o'clock, Clara said. She hung up and sat for a moment. Who was that? Lily asked. A man who wants to meet us. From the bikers. Yes, Lily thought about this. Is he going to be nice? I think so. Okay. Lily handed Clara a cracker. You should eat something before we go. Clara looked at the cracker, looked at her daughter. When did you get so practical? She said. Lily shrugged with the sublime confidence of a child who has always been this way and knows it. I get it from you. The library was warm in the specific institutional way of public buildings that have been heated for decades, not cozy, not comfortable, but genuinely, thoroughly warm. The kind of warmth that costs nothing and means everything when you've been sleeping in a car. Clara felt Lily's whole body relax the moment they walked through the front doors, a slow physical exhale, and she realized her daughter had been braced against the cold for so long that relaxing out of it was visible. That realization landed somewhere in her chest and sat there. She got Lily settled at a children's table with a stack of picture books and her crackers in her coat pocket, and then found a computer terminal in the corner and opened the county housing application and got to work. The application was 12 pages long. It required documentation she had to pull from her email. The foreclosure notice, the death certificate, tax records from 2 years ago, Lily's birth certificate, a letter from the food pantry confirming food insecurity, and a signed statement describing current living situation. Clara had gathered most of these over the past 2 weeks in the same painstaking way. She did everything now methodically without the luxury of frustration, one step at a time. She was on page 9 when she felt someone stop behind her. She turned. Griffin Mace was not what she had pictured, and she recognized immediately that this was because she had been picturing Hank that massive leather and gray image and had transferred it wholesale. Griffin was taller and leaner, maybe 60, with close-cropped silver hair and a face that had the quality of well-worn leather, not rough, but worked in every line earned. He was wearing the vest, but under it a plain, dark button-down shirt, and he was carrying 2 cups of coffee from the cart in the library lobby. He held one out to her. She looked at it. It's coffee, he said, not a down payment on anything. She took it. You're early, she said. You said 10. It's 10:02. He looked at her computer screen without trying to. Application, county emergency housing. He nodded. How far along? Page 9 of 12. What's stopping you on page 9 bounds? Clara looked at the screen. Section 9's proof of consistent effort to secure alternative housing. Please list all employment applications submitted in the past 60 days, including company name, date, contact information, and outcome. I have to list all the jobs I applied for. I don't have them all written down. I have some in my email and some I just walked in and applied and can you pull your sent emails? Some, my laptop died 6 weeks ago. I've been doing everything on my phone. Griffin looked at the screen again, then at her. My son, the paralegal, he's good at this part, the documentation part. If you want, I can call him. Clara looked at Griffin Mace over the rim of her coffee cup. You came to talk, she said. You said one conversation. I did. So talk. He sat down in the chair beside the computer terminal, the one that was technically for a second patron, and he set his coffee on the desk and he looked at her with the kind of directness that she had already identified as a characteristic of these people, this particular variety of eye contact that did not flinch and did not demand, just looked. Hank called me from the hospital at 6 this morning, Griffin said. I've known Hank Sullivan for 19 years. We've been through things together that I'm not going to list because they're not relevant, and some of them I'm not proud of. He paused. In 19 years, I have heard Hank Sullivan's voice in a lot of different states, angry, drunk, grieving. He lost his son 6 years ago. Motorcycle accident, 19 years old. He said it plainly, not for effect, just as fact. Scared. I've heard Hank scared. I've heard him in the hospital before. He picked up his coffee. I have never heard him the way he sounded this morning. Clara waited. He said, Griffin stopped, set the coffee down, picked it up again, put it back. He was a man who was choosing words with care and knew he was choosing them with care and wasn't going to pretend he wasn't. He said, Griff, this woman had nothing, less than nothing, and she gave it to me, and then she said it was the right thing and meant it. His jaw worked for a moment. He said, I've been in this club 22 years, and I've done things I told myself were right, and I've never in my life felt what right actually is until a woman in a broken car under a bridge told me and meant it. The library was quiet around them. Someone was pushing a cart of books somewhere. A child laughed briefly 2 tables over and then went back to being quiet. He's not a sentimental man, Griffin said. I got that impression, Clara said. So when he called me at 6 in the morning and said, we need to help this woman, and I could hear what was in his voice. Griffin shook his head slightly. I'm not here to negotiate with you, Clara. I'm not here to make a deal. I'm here because Hank asked me to come and look you in the eye and figure out what you actually need, and then if you let us actually do it. Clara was quiet for a moment. The coffee was good, better than the food pantries. She drank some of it and put it down and looked at her application on the screen, page 9 of 12, section 9C, all the jobs she'd applied for and not gotten all the evidence of effort that she'd been required to document in order to prove that she deserved help. What do you know about me? She asked. What Hank told me and what I can see, which is a woman who's been fighting alone for a long time, Griffin said it, and fighting well, and who's close to the edge of what one person can carry. Clara looked at the screen. I don't want to be a project, she said. It came out quieter than she intended. I don't want to be the charity case someone takes on to feel good about themselves. I've spent the last 8 months in systems that treated me like a number, and She stopped, pressed her lips together, found her footing. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I need a stable place to live, and I need to get back to work, and I know exactly what I need. I don't need someone to decide for me what I need. Griffin looked at her. The silence stretched in a way that was not uncomfortable. Then tell me, he said, exactly what you need. She looked at him. She thought about the 12-page application, about the 3 weeks it would take to process it if she completed it today, and the 30-day waiting list after that, and the odds she'd been quoted by the social worker, which were not encouraging. About Lily's face when she'd asked if they were going to stay under the bridge forever. About the job she'd had before Marcus got sick, administrative coordinator, a medical supply company good at it, good enough that her supervisor had sent a reference letter that she still had in her email because she hadn't been able to bring herself to delete it, even when it started to feel like a document from a previous life. I need somewhere warm for my daughter to sleep, she said. Not temporary, not a shelter with 30-day limits. Somewhere real. And I need to get back to work, which means I need Lily in a school or a program so I can actually do that. And she stopped again. This part was harder. I need to stop spending all my energy just surviving so I can spend some of it actually living again. Griffin Mace looked at her for a long moment. Okay, he said. Okay, she repeated. That's it. That's it. He picked up his phone. Give me 48 hours. To do what? To make some calls. He stood up. Finish your application. All 12 pages. My son's name is Marcus. He caught himself at her expression. Sorry, coincidence. His name is Derek. I'll give you his number. He can help you with the documentation pieces today here while you're in the library. Is that all right? Clara looked at Griffin Mace standing over her with his phone in his hand and the patches on his chest and the 19 years of history she knew nothing about behind his eyes. And she thought about right things and what they cost and who pays. Yes, she said. That's all right. He wrote Derek's number on the back of a library receipt he found in his pocket and set it on the desk beside her. Then he put his jacket on. He had taken it off at some point, she realized, without her noticing, and picked up his coffee. One more thing, he said. She looked up. Hank wanted me to tell you something. He said to tell you. Griffin paused, not for effect, genuinely gathering it. He said to tell you that nobody's done something like that for him since his wife. She passed 8 years ago. He looked down at the cup. He said you have her quality. Whatever that means, he said you'd either understand it or you wouldn't. Clara felt the stone in her sternum shift. She understood it. She didn't say so. She just looked at the computer screen and the 12-page application in Section 9C, waiting for her. Thank you, she said quietly. 48 hours, Griffin said. He walked out of the library and she watched him go, and then she turned back to the screen. Lily appeared at her elbow. She had a picture book under one arm and a look of studied casualness that meant she had been listening from approximately 12 feet away. Was that him, Lily said, the president? Yes? He seemed okay. He was okay. What did he say? Clara looked at Section 9C and started typing. He said he's going to help us, she said. Do you believe in him? She typed another line. Thought about Griffin's voice. Thought about 48 hours. Thought about Hank Sullivan at 6 a.m, calling from a hospital bed to say a woman in a broken car made him understand what right actually means. Yes, Clara said, I believe him. Lily leaned against her arm. Good, she said. And Clara kept typing page 9 of 12, the whole long record of trying all of it, because it was what she had, and she was going to finish it, and she was going to do the next thing after it, and the next thing after that. That was how you kept going. You just kept going. Derek Mace was 29 years old, and he had his father's eyes and none of his father's economy, with words which Clara discovered within approximately 4 minutes of him sitting down beside her at the library computer terminal. Okay, so the thing about Section 9C, he said, pulling his chair close and leaning toward the screen, with the specific energy of a person who genuinely enjoys documentation problems, is that the county designed it to be impossible on purpose, not maliciously impossible, just bureaucratically impossible, which is actually worse because there's no one to be angry at. You just have to out-document the documentation, which we can do. Do you have your email pulled up? Yes. Okay, and your phone, can you forward everything job-related to a temporary address so we can pull it into one place? I use a system where, actually, do you want me to explain the system or just do the thing? Just do the thing, Clara said. Derek grinned. He had a good grin, uncomplicated and quick. Perfect. My dad said you were direct. He meant it as a compliment. I know. They worked for 2 hours. Derek was whatever else he was extraordinarily good at this, at finding the documents, pulling the threads, constructing the paper architecture that bureaucratic systems require before they will acknowledge that a person's suffering is real and therefore eligible for help. He found 11 job applications in Clara's sent mail that she had forgotten about. He drafted a supplementary statement for Section 11B that was legally precise and emotionally compelling in exactly the right proportions. He knew which county caseworker handled emergency housing prioritizations and what language in the application triggered expedited review. How does a paralegal for a motorcycle club know this much about county housing applications? Clara asked at one point. Derek didn't look up from the screen. Because half the people the club tries to help are dealing with exactly this, he said. Housing benefits legal documentation. My dad started asking me to help about 4 years ago. I've done maybe 60 of these applications. A pause. Yours is one of the stronger ones for what it's worth. Your documentation trail is solid. You've been doing everything right. Clara looked at the screen. It doesn't feel like it. It never does from the inside. Derek typed something quickly. But from the outside, what I see is someone who filed for every available program, maintained documentation through a housing crisis, while caring for a child alone, kept applying for work, despite getting no responses, and never missed a food pantry appointment. That's not failure. That's a person the system has been failing. The stone in Clara's sternum shifted again, the way it had when Griffin said her name, and when Donna called her Clara through the 2-inch window gap. She was developing a growing suspicion that the Mace family was more dangerous to her composure than any motorcycle patch had ever been. She submitted the application at 11:47 in the morning. Derek made her screenshot the confirmation number and email it to herself and write it on a piece of paper and put it in her wallet. Triple redundancy, he said. For anything important, always triple redundancy. You're very thorough. My dad raised me that way. He closed the laptop he'd brought with him and started packing his bag. He's going to call you tonight. Whatever he tells you, I want you to know it's real. He doesn't say things he doesn't mean. Never has. How long has he been the president? Clara asked. 14 years. Derek zipped his bag. He took over after the previous guy made some decisions that hurt people inside the club. My dad cleaned it up. It took him about 3 years and cost him. He stopped. It cost him a lot. But the chapter he runs now is different from what it was. Different in ways that matter. Clara looked at him. Why are you telling me that? Derek looked back at her steadily. Because I think you're trying to figure out whether to trust him, and I'd rather you just have the information than have to guess. He stood up. Lily's about to lose her mind over there, by the way. She's read every picture book on that rack twice. Clara looked over. Lily was indeed staring at her with an expression of polite but clearly maxed out patience. Thank you, Clara said to Derek, for the application, for coming. Don't thank me yet, Derek said. Thank me in 48 hours. He left, and Clara went to her daughter, and they spent the rest of the morning in the library's warmth. Lily in the children's section with a librarian who had taken a visible shine to her and was producing books from somewhere in the back that weren't on the public shelf. Clara at a table nearby with a yellow legal pad, writing down everything she could think of that constituted a plan. Not a fantasy, not a wish list, a real plan with real steps and real contingencies. The kind of plan you make when you've been living inside the difference between wishing and doing for long enough to know exactly what that difference costs. By noon, she had 3 columns. Immediate needs, 30-day goals, 6-month targets. The immediate needs column was the longest. The 6-month column had things in it that felt almost laughably ambitious, but she wrote them anyway because Marcus had always said that you write down the thing you want, even when you can't see the path to it, because the writing is how the path starts to appear. She was on the 2nd page of the immediate needs column when her phone rang again. Not Griffin this time. A number she recognized, Sharon Pauley, her former supervisor at MedCore Supply. The woman who had written the reference letter. The woman who, 14 months ago, had cried at Marcus's funeral and held Clara's hand during the service and said, "Call me whenever you need anything," and had meant it the way people mean things at funerals, which is fully and genuinely in that moment, and then life closes back over it like water. Clara stared at the name on the screen. She answered it. Clara. Sharon's voice was exactly as she remembered it, warm and slightly rushed, the voice of someone who manages 12 things at once and has made her peace with it. I'm so glad you picked up. I've been trying to reach you. My number changed, Clara said. A few months ago. I lost track of who I'd updated. I reached out to your sister. She gave me the new one. A pause. Well, madam, I should have called sooner. I've been thinking about you. I heard things weren't. Sharon stopped, recalibrated. Are you okay? I'm managing. The silence on Sharon's end lasted 1 second too long, which told Clara that Sharon knew the answer to that question was more complicated than managing and had already known it before she called. I'm calling because we have an opening, Sharon said. Administrative coordinator, full-time benefits after 30 days. It's your job, Clara. The one you left. Deborah, who took it over, retired in September, and I've been running it with temp staff, and honestly, it's been a disaster, and I should have called you 6 months ago, and I didn't, and I'm sorry for that. Clara's hand tightened on the phone. It's still remote capable, she said. Her voice was level. She was very proud of how level it was. 2 days in office, 3 remote, same as before. Sharon paused. The salary is 12% higher than when you left. Cost of living adjustment, plus I went to bat for a bump. Because you're not a new hire, you know this operation, and I needed the budget people to understand that. Another pause. Please say something. When would you need me to start? 2 weeks, which I know is if you need more time. 2 weeks is fine, Clara said. 2 weeks is good. Clara, Sharon's voice went quieter. Are you really okay? I will be, Clara said. And this time it wasn't management. It was true. She could feel it being true, could feel the specific gravity of it, not a wish, not a performance, but the actual future tense of a real sentence. I will be. She hung up and sat with the phone in both hands and looked at the legal pad in front of her, 3 columns, immediate needs and 30-day goals, and 6-month targets. And she picked up the pen, and in the 6-month column next to the line that said steady employment, she drew a single clean check mark. Then she put the pen down and let herself feel it for 30 seconds. 30. No more. Then she picked the pen up again. She did not tell Lily about the job yet, not because she was hiding it, but because she was holding it in the specific, careful way. You hold something fragile before you know where to put it, before you are certain the surface is stable enough to set it down. She was superstitious in the way that people become superstitious after enough things have gone wrong. She needed 48 hours and Griffin's call in the ground to be solid before she let the good news become something Lily could count on. They ate lunch from the bag Donna had packed, the second foil portion, still decent cold in the last of the crackers, and then the librarian, whose name turned out to be Ruth, and who had grandchildren Lily's age and had clearly decided that Lily was now her personal project for the afternoon, produced a puzzle from somewhere, and installed Lily at a table near the window, and Clara watched her daughter lean over the pieces with the total absorption of a child who has found a problem she can actually solve. At 2:15, the library's front door opened and Billy walked in. He looked somewhat out of place in a public library, which Clara suspected he knew because he wore it with the particular comfortable lack of self-consciousness of a man who has long since stopped caring whether he looks out of place anywhere. He spotted Clara and came toward her directly. Griffin sent me, he said, sitting down across from her without preamble. Why? Because something happened, and he wanted you to hear it in person. Billy's jaw was set in that controlled way she'd seen on him the night before, the face of a man keeping something contained. There's a property on Clement Street. It's been sitting vacant 14 months, bank-owned after foreclosure. Griffin's been in contact with the bank about it for a situation like... He stopped. For situations where we want to help somebody get into a real place. Not renting. Owning. Clara went very still. Billy, she said slowly. Let me finish. He put his hands flat on the table, not aggressive, just grounding himself. The bank has been trying to offload it. It needs work. Significant work. But the structure's sound. Griffin had it inspected 2 months ago before any of this, just as part of a project the club's been doing with vacant properties on the east side. He looked at her. Griffin is proposing to negotiate the purchase and fund the renovation. Full renovation, everything it needs to be a real home for you and your daughter. He's prepared to put it in your name. Fully. The silence in the library pressed in around Clara. That's not possible, she said. It's possible. People don't do that. We do, Billy said simply, when the situation is right, when it means something. He looked at his hands on the table. My mother was in a situation like yours when I was 7. Different city, different time, same situation. Nobody helped her. She didn't make it. He said it without performance, the way people say true things when they have had long enough to make peace with them. Griffin knows that story. We all know that story. When we see someone who, when we see Clara Bennett, we don't walk past it. Clara looked at him. This hard-faced man who had tried to hand her money through a 2-inch window gap, and taken it back when she said no, and then showed up in a library to sit across from her and tell her about his mother. There are conditions, she said. No conditions. Billy, there are always conditions. He met her eyes. Not this time. Why? Because Hank asked, and because it's right. He picked up the library receipt that Derek had left on the table, Griffin's son's number, still sitting there. He looked at it and set it back down. The only thing Griffin will ask is that you let the crew come in and do the work. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to supervise. You just have to say yes and step back and let us do what we do. He's already got men ready. Some of them are actual contractors, licensed, insured. Some of them just know how to build things because that's what they've done their whole lives. All of them want to do this. Clara looked at the legal pad, at the check mark she'd drawn next to steady employment 45 minutes ago. I got a job today, she said. It came out before she'd decided to say it. My old job. They called this morning. Billy looked at her. My old supervisor, Clara continued. Full-time. Benefits? 2 weeks. Billy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Does Griffin know? No. He's going to say it changes the calculation. The property with income coming in there are programs, legitimate housing programs, that the club can help facilitate without. No, Clara said it quietly and firmly. What you described, if it's real, if it's what you say it is, she stopped. Organized what she was feeling into something she could actually hand to another person. Lily has been sleeping in a car for 23 days. She's been cold every single night. She told me this morning that she wonders if we're going to stay under the bridge forever. Her voice held. She was proud of it holding. I start a job in 2 weeks. I can pay my way from that point forward. I will pay my way, but I need somewhere real for her to sleep in 2 weeks. And whatever the county application produces, if it produces anything, it won't be in 2 weeks. It won't be in 30 days. Billy nodded once. So yes, Clara said. Tell Griffin yes. Something shifted in Billy's face, subtle, real, the same quality of shift she'd seen in Donna's face through the car window, in Griffin's face in the library chair, in Derek's face over the computer screen. Like something releasing. I'll tell him, Billy said. He stood up. He'll want to move fast. Probably have people on site by tomorrow morning. How many people? Billy looked at her. However many it takes. He walked out, and Clara sat alone at the table and looked at the 3-column legal pad, and the check mark and the empty lines below it that were no longer as empty as they had been this morning. And she breathed. She breathed slowly and deliberately, the way she had trained herself to breathe when things got very large, very fast. The measured breathing of a person who has learned that the body needs to be reminded sometimes that it is allowed to keep going. Then Lily appeared at her elbow, puzzle-flushed and triumphant. I finished it, she announced. The whole thing. Ruth said I was the fastest she'd ever seen. She's right, Clara said. Mama, you look weird. I'm fine. You look like when something happened, but you're not sure if it's good yet. Clara looked at her daughter, at the specific intelligence of that face the way it had always been. Marcus's intelligence filtered through someone entirely new. Someone who was becoming more herself every single day, regardless of what the world was doing around her. It's good, Clara said. I think it's very good. I'll tell you everything tonight. Lily studied her with those evaluating eyes. Promise. Okay. Lily went back to Ruth and the puzzle pieces, and Clara looked at the legal pad and added to the 6-month column below steady employment, with its check mark, a new line. She wrote real home. Then she put the pen down and did not draw the check mark yet. She would wait for the ground to be solid. She would wait until she could set it down without it breaking. But she wrote the words. That was where it started. Griffin called it 6. She and Lily were back at the overpass the car needed to keep it charged, needed the familiar territory of it even now when the walls of that territory were pressing in. She had the camp stove running again, burning the last of the fuel canister, giving them heat for as long as it lasted. She had Lily wrapped in every blanket. She had the phone charged to 70% at the library window. Billy told me about the job, Griffin said. I was going to tell you. I know. A pause. How do you feel? Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, she said honestly. That's fair, Griffin said. Can I tell you something about how Hank described you to me this morning? You can. He said you were the most self-possessed person he'd ever met in a crisis. Said he's seen men in bad situations panic, beg, bargain, shut down. Said you just handled it, made decisions, didn't make it about yourself. Griffin's voice was measured and direct. He said the thing that scared him wasn't the cold, or the bike, or the injury. It was watching you give him the last of your food and show no hesitation. He said that scared him because people who have nothing to fall back on don't usually move like that. I had Lily, Clara said. When you have someone depending on you, you don't get to hesitate. No, Griffin said. Most people do anyway. The camp stove flickered. Clara put her hand near it, automatically checking the heat. The property on Clement Street, Griffin said. Billy talked to the bank contact this evening. There's a pathway. It won't be fast, so property transfer takes time, but there's a temporary occupancy arrangement that we can get in place within 72 hours while the process moves forward. I've done this before. It's legal, it's documented, and it means you and Lily can be in that house in 3 days. Clara closed her eyes. 3 days. The renovation will happen around you, Griffin continued. My guys are good. They work fast and they work clean, and they won't make your life more disruptive than it needs to be. You have my word on that. I want to see it first, Clara said. The house, before I say yes. Of course. And I want to understand what I'm agreeing to. Exactly, all of it. I want Derek to walk me through any documents before I sign anything. That's exactly what Derek is for. And she stopped. This part was harder. This was the part she'd been circling all day, the part underneath the part. I want to be able to talk to Hank before this goes further. I want to talk to the person this started with. The silence on Griffin's end was thoughtful. He's still in the hospital, Griffin said. I know. He might not be ready for... That's his call, Clara said. I'm not asking to visit. I'm asking for 5 minutes on the phone. If he wants to talk to me, if he doesn't, that's fine too, and none of the rest of this changes. Griffin was quiet for a moment. I'll ask him tonight. Thank you. Clara. His voice shifted slightly, not softer exactly, but more settled the way a foundation settles when it's fully weighted. I've been doing this a long time, looking out for people inside the club and sometimes outside it. I've made mistakes. There are things in the chapters past that I'm not proud of, and I've spent 14 years trying to build something different, something that deserves the loyalty it asks for. A pause. What you did giving that soup, you didn't know it, but you gave it to the right man. Hank has been carrying something since he lost his son, something that was making him smaller. And the way he sounded this morning, whatever you gave him on that concrete, Clara, it wasn't just soup. Clara sat in the cold car with her daughter pressed against her side and the camp stove making its small orange warmth between the front seats. He gave me something too, she said quietly. He didn't know it either. What did he give you? She thought about it, really thought about it, not the quick answer, the honest one. A reason to believe that the next right thing would be enough, she said. I didn't know what was going to happen. I still don't. But I knew that doing the right thing was enough to justify doing it. And somehow that... She stopped. That was enough to get through the night. Griffin was quiet on the other end for a long moment. I'll have Hank call you, he said. Tonight, if he's up to it. Okay. Get some sleep, Clara. I'll try. She hung up and sat in the orange flicker of the camp stove with Lily's warm weight against her side. And she thought about 3 days and a house on Clement Street and the way a check mark on a legal pad can feel like the beginning of something real. Hank called at 9:17. His voice was different from the overpass, less blurred, more present, but with something underneath it that was stripped back the way people sound in hospitals when the usual social armor has been removed by circumstances and they're just left with their actual voice. You wanted to talk, he said. Yes, how are you feeling? Like someone dropped a motorcycle on me. A pause. Because someone dropped a motorcycle on me. Broken collarbone and 6 stitches and a bruised ego. She could hear the faint edge of something in his voice that might have been humor if he'd let it all the way out. Donna says I need to start wearing my helmet on ice. I told her I've been doing this 22 years. She said that's the problem. She's right. She's always right. It's her most irritating quality. He went quiet for a moment. Griffin says you want to see the house before you decide. Yes. Good. That's the right call. Don't let anybody, don't let us pressure you into anything. This is your decision. All of it. I know, Clara said. I wanted to tell you that myself before this goes further. It's my decision. Yes, Hank said, it is. And I'm making it. The pause on his end lasted exactly long enough. Okay, he said, and the word was simple and complete and carried in it something she recognized the specific weight of a man who has been underwater for a long time and has, just for the first time in longer than he can account for, felt the floor. Hank, she said, yeah, get some sleep. He made that sound again, the one from the overpass that wasn't quite a laugh. Yes, ma'am, he said. She hung up and the camp stove went out, the fuel finally empty, and the darkness came in around them, and Lily said sleepily from against her side, was that him, the man from before? Yes. Is he okay? He's going to be okay. Good. Lily burrowed deeper into the blankets. Mama. Yeah, baby. You said tonight you'd tell me everything. Clara looked at the dark where the stove had been. We're going to see a house tomorrow, she said. The silence from the back seat was enormous. A real house, Lily said. A real house. Another silence. Then Lily sat up. Clara could feel her sitting up in the dark, could feel the quality of her daughter's attention, sharpening even through exhaustion and blankets and cold. With a door, Lily said. With a door. And walls. 4 of them. And a bed. A bed, Clara said. A real bed. Lily was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very small and very careful. The voice of a child who has learned to hold good things gently because she knows now how quickly they can change. Mama, she said, are you sure? And Clara, who had not let herself be sure about anything in 8 months, who had spent 23 nights in this car, running math that never added up, who had given away the last bowl of soup on a concrete slab in 11-degree weather because it was the right thing, and had then sat in the dark and waited for the nothing that would follow it. Yes, she said, I'm sure. Lily lay back down. Clara felt her settle, felt the specific quality of her daughter's exhale, not relief exactly, but something adjacent to it, something quieter and more fundamental. The exhale of a child whose body finally believes what her mother has told her. The dark held them. The cold pressed in, and somewhere across the city in a house on Clement Street, that needed work but had 4 walls and a door and a yard and rooms that could become something a future was waiting to be walked into. Clara sat awake in the dark and let herself, for the first time in 23 days, want it. Really want it. Not carefully, not with contingencies, not with the armor of managing expectations that she'd been wearing so long she'd forgotten what was underneath it. She let herself want the house and the woe and the bed for Lily, and the glow-in-the-dark stars on a ceiling somewhere stuck up there, 1 star at a time by whatever came next. She let herself want it all. The dark didn't argue. She didn't sleep much. That was nothing new. But the quality of the sleeplessness was different this time. Not the grinding, anxious wakefulness of a woman running impossible math, but something closer to the sleeplessness of the night before, something real. The kind that isn't quite fear and isn't quite excitement and sits exactly in the space between them, where the body doesn't know what to do with itself. At 5:40, she gave up and sat up and looked at the dark and made a decision. Whatever today was, she was going to meet it clean. She used the last of the water in the jug she kept under the passenger seat and washed her face and Lily's face and combed her daughter's hair with the small comb she kept in her coat pocket, and put Lily in her least worn outfit, the dark jeans and the blue sweater that still looked like something a child should be wearing to school. And then she put on her own best remaining clothes and sat back and looked at them both in the rearview mirror. You look nice, Lily said. So do you. Are we going somewhere important? Yes. To see the house. Not until this afternoon, but yes. Lily accepted this. She was eating the last tangerine from Donna's bag segment by segment with her customary mathematical precision. What happens this morning? Griffin is sending someone to take us to breakfast, Clara said, and then we're going to the house. Lily looked up from the tangerine. Griffin is the president. Yes. And he's sending someone to take us to breakfast. She said it the way a 6-year-old says something when she is quietly understanding that the world has shifted in some way she doesn't have full language for yet. Like a driver, like a friend, Clara said. And she wasn't entirely sure that was the right word, but it was the one that came and it didn't feel wrong. Billy arrived at 7:15 in a truck, not a motorcycle, a dark blue pickup that had clearly been used hard for years and was loved the way working vehicles get loved, without sentimentality, but with consistent maintenance. He knocked on the car window, the same way he always did, flat-palmed and straightforward. And when Clara opened the door, he looked at Lily and said, "You must be the one who finished Ruth's puzzle." Lily stared at him. "How do you know about that?" "Ruth's my aunt," Billy said. "She called my mother last night. Said a little girl came in yesterday and finished a 400-piece puzzle in 40 minutes. My mother told me. My mother tells me everything." He said it without expression, which somehow made it funnier. Lily looked at Clara. Clara looked at Lily. Neither of them had a response to this. "Come on," Billy said. "There's a diner on Michigan that does the best eggs in Detroit, and Griffin's already there and he doesn't like to wait." The diner was called Paulette's, and it was the kind of place that had been the same since 1974 and intended to remain that way. It smelled like coffee and bacon grease and something baked, and every surface was slightly too warm and slightly too loud and completely unambiguously real. Clara felt Lily's hand tighten in hers the moment they walked in. Not from fear, she realized, but from something else, from the specific grip of a child experiencing a place that feels like the world is supposed to feel and recognizing it. Griffin was in a corner booth with Derek and a third man she didn't recognize. Older than Griffin, maybe late 60s, wearing the vest, but also reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and a flannel shirt that had seen better decades. Griffin stood when he saw them. Held out his hand to Lily first. "You're Lily," he said. "Yes," Lily said. She shook his hand with the gravity of a small diplomat. "You're the president." "That's right." "Billy says you don't like to wait." Griffin looked at Billy. Billy looked at the wall. "Billy says a lot of things," Griffin said. "Sit down. Order whatever you want." The man in the reading glasses turned out to be Joe Carruthers, and he turned out to be the most important person at the table, which Clara didn't understand until Griffin explained it. "Joe is a licensed contractor," Griffin said. "He's been building and renovating in this city for 38 years. He's the one who inspected the Clement Street property 2 months ago. I want you to hear what he has to say about it before we go." Joe pushed the reading glasses down onto his nose and opened a folder he had had beside him on the seat. Clara saw photographs, interior shots of a house, the kind of methodical documentation photo that contractors take, not artistic, just clinical and complete. "Structure is sound," Joe said without preamble. He had a voice like gravel on a moving belt, rough, continuous, purposeful. "I know it doesn't look like it from the outside, but the bones are excellent. 1948 construction, proper masonry, no foundation issues. Roof needs full replacement. That's the biggest ticket item. Plumbing's functional, but old, needs updating in the bathrooms and kitchen. Electrical needs a full panel replacement and rewiring in the upstairs. Insulation is inadequate throughout, which is why it's been hemorrhaging heat and the bank couldn't find a buyer." He looked at Clara over the reading glasses. "Everything I just said sounds like bad news. It isn't. None of it is structural. All of it is fixable, and I know exactly how to fix it." "How long?" Clara asked. "For a livable baseline, heat, water, electricity, functional kitchen and bathroom, 3 days if I have enough hands. For complete renovation," he tilted his head, 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 if the weather cooperates. "Griffin mentioned temporary occupancy," Clara said. "I'd be moving in before the renovation is complete." "The livable baseline comes first," Joe said. "You and your daughter would be in a fully heated, fully functional house within 72 hours. The rest happens around you." He paused. "I've done occupied renovations before. My crew is professional. They respect the space. You'd know in advance every day what's happening and where." Clara looked at the photographs. She looked at them carefully, the way she looked at everything important, not searching for reasons to say no, but not letting herself skip over things either. She owed Lily clear eyes. She owed herself clear eyes. "What's on Clement Street?" she asked. "In terms of neighborhood." "Mixed block," Griffin said. "Mostly owner-occupied. There's a family 2 doors down. The Washington's been there 20 years. There's an elementary school 4 blocks east. Good school, Clara. Tested well, good principal. I know 3 families whose kids go there." He said it matter-of-factly, not as a sales pitch, but as information, and the distinction was one she'd become sensitive to. "Lily starts school in the fall," Claire said. That gives you 7 months to get settled. Derek had been quiet through all of this, eating his eggs and listening. He looked up now. The occupancy agreement and the property transfer documentation are ready for your review. I prepared them last night. There are no hidden provisions, no conditions precedent, no clauses that benefit anyone except you. I'd encourage you to have an independent attorney look at them if you want. We can wait. How long would that take? If you want an attorney today, it takes as long as it takes to find one. If you trust the documents as I've prepared them, we can sign this morning. Clara looked at Derek. Are you telling me to trust them? I'm telling you they're clean, Derek said. What you choose to do with that is your business. Lily had been eating pancakes with the concentration of someone who has not had pancakes in a very long time and is not going to be distracted from them by anything as minor as real estate documents. She looked up now, syrup on her chin, and looked at Clara with those Marcus eyes. Mama, she said, can I see the house? We're going this afternoon, Clara said. Can I look at the pictures? Clara slid the folder across the table. Lily wiped her hands on her napkin carefully, thoroughly, which she had always done because Marcus had taught her that you treat other people's things with care, and then opened the folder and looked at the photographs one by one with the same focused attention she gave puzzles. The table was quiet while she looked. This room, Lily said, finally pointing to one of the photographs. What room is this? Joe leaned over. That's the second bedroom. Upstairs, east-facing. Gets morning light. How big is it? About 11 by 12. Lily nodded slowly. She looked at the photograph for another moment. Then she looked at Clara. That could be my room, she said. Not a question. A statement delivered with the same quiet certainty that Marcus had deployed when he pressed glow-in-the-dark stars to a ceiling with his thumb. Clara's throat tightened. Yes, she said, that could be your room. Lily closed the folder and handed it back to Joe and went back to her pancakes. Griffin looked at Clara. Clara looked at the folder. Where do I sign? She said. The papers took 40 minutes. Derek walked her through every page, every clause, every provision, not rushing, not glossing, treating each section as though it deserved her full understanding because it did. Clara asked 12 questions. Derek answered all 12 fully. She signed where she was supposed to sign and initialed where she was supposed to initial. And when it was done, Derek collected everything neatly and said, You're going to get copies of all of this by email within the hour. Keep them somewhere safe. Triple redundancy. Triple redundancy, Clara repeated. Always. They drove to Clement Street at 11. Joe let them in with a key and stood back and let Clara and Lily move through the house at their own pace, which was the right instinct and the thing she would remember about Joe Carruthers long after she'd forgotten other things about that day. He stood in the front hallway and drank coffee from a travel mug and did not narrate anything or point anything out or attempt to manage what they were experiencing. He just let them experience it. Lily went straight up the stairs. Clara followed. She could hear her daughter moving above her quick footsteps, then a pause, then the sound of a door opening. She came up and turned and found Lily standing in the middle of the east-facing bedroom with her arms slightly out from her sides and her face turned up toward the ceiling and her eyes closed. Lily, Clara said quietly. I'm checking it, Lily said. Her eyes were still closed. Checking what? If it feels right. Clara stood in the doorway and watched her daughter stand in the empty room with the morning light coming through the dirty window, filtered dusty, but present, but real, the actual light of an actual morning in an actual room, and she let her check it. After a moment, Lily opened her eyes and looked at her mother. It feels right, she said. Clara nodded. She didn't trust her voice right then, so she just nodded, and Lily nodded back, and then they went back downstairs to where Joe was waiting in the hallway, and Clara said, Tell me how it starts. The work. Tell me exactly how it starts. Joe looked at his watch. I've got 12 men on call. I make one phone call, and they're here in 2 hours. We start with the roof assessment this afternoon, the electrical panel tonight, and the heating system first thing tomorrow. By tomorrow night, you have heat. He paused. By Friday, you have a home. Clara looked at the front door of the house, the real door with a real lock that opened into a real space. Make the call, she said. Joe made the call. She heard him on the phone behind her while she stood in the front room and looked at the walls and thought about what goes on walls. She had photographs, still not many, she'd lost most of them in the move, but some stored on her phone, some printed and kept in a folder in the Taurus's glove compartment. There was a photograph of Marcus in the hospital at the end. Not from the worst days, but from a day when he'd been better, when he was sitting up, and they'd brought Lily in, and he was laughing at something she'd said, and the light had caught him in a way that made him look like himself instead of like what he was becoming. And Claire had taken it without telling him she was taking it, and she had looked at it every single day since. That photograph was going on the wall of the house on Clement Street. She hadn't known until this moment that that was true. But it was. The 12 men arrived in less than 2 hours. They came in trucks and they came ready to work, and they moved through the house with the efficiency of people who have done this before and know what they're doing, which Clara gathered from Joe that several of them literally had licensed electricians, a licensed plumber, 2 carpenters who had been building things in Detroit for a combined 60 years. The others were club members who, as Billy had said, knew how to build things because it was what they did. 2 of them turned out to be brothers who had grown up in their father's construction business and had the easy, wordless communication of people who have been working alongside each other their entire adult lives. Billy was there. He was running wire in the upstairs hallway, and he did it with the competence of someone who has done it 1,000 times, which surprised Clara until she thought about it, and then it didn't. She and Lily were in the front room, which had been declared the staging area for the day, meaning it was the one room nobody was actively working in, and therefore the one room where they could be. Joe had brought 2 folding chairs and a card table and set them up there, and Lily had installed herself at the card table with her library books. Ruth had sent her home with 3 of them, insisted with the inexorable generosity of a librarian who has adopted a child and was reading with the determined focus of someone who was trying to be helpful by staying out of the way. Clara sat in the other folding chair and watched the house being worked on and tried to locate inside herself what she was feeling, which was harder than she expected. She was accustomed to feeling things she could name: fear, exhaustion, grief, the specific brittle determination of someone who cannot afford to stop. And what she was feeling now didn't have a name she recognized. It was large and it moved through her in waves, and it was not sadness exactly, although there was sadness in it, and it was not happiness exactly, although there was certainly that, and it was something underneath both of those, something more fundamental. At 2 in the afternoon, Griffin called. "Are you at the house?" he said. "Yes." "How does it feel?" She looked at the walls, at the workers moving through them, at Lily bent over her book at the card table with complete absorption. "Like something that's actually happening," she said. "Good, that's what it is." A pause. "I need to tell you something. Something that happened this morning, before you hear it from anyone else." Clara went still. "A reporter called the club," Griffin said. "Local news. Someone tipped them. I don't know who I'm working on finding out about the property, about what we're doing. They want to do a story." The stillness in Clara deepened. "No," she said immediately. "I told them no," Griffin said. "Told them the situation was private and not for public consumption. They said they'd pursue it anyway because it's a matter of public record once the transfer documents are filed." "Can we stop that?" "Derek says not entirely. The property transfer is public record. They can report on that without our cooperation." He paused. "What they can't do is put your face or Lily's face in anything without your consent. Derek has already sent a formal legal notice to the news station making that explicit. They've acknowledged it." Clara let out a slow breath. "So there might be a story. There might be a story about a property transfer and a renovation on Clement Street. That's all they can legally report without you. And if they call me directly, you're under no obligation to respond. I'd suggest you don't. Derek will handle any media contact." Another pause. "Clara, I'm sorry, I wanted this to be private. I still want that." "It's okay," she said, and she meant it mostly. The thing underneath the thing, the fear that had flickered when he said reporter, was about Lily, about protecting Lily's experience of this from becoming something that required managing something that put her daughter on public display during the most vulnerable passage of her life. But if they couldn't use Lily's image or name, that fear was containable. "It's okay, Griffin. I'll keep you informed about anything that develops." "Thank you." She hung up and sat with the information and decided to put it in the filing cabinet, labeled "Things I will think about when I have the bandwidth," and returned her attention to the house. At 4 o'clock, Joe found her in the front room and sat down in the chair across from her with the methodical deliberateness of a man who has something specific to say and is going to say it properly. I need to tell you something about this house, he said. Clara looked at him. When I inspected it 2 months ago, Joe said, I found something in the upstairs bedroom, the east-facing one, Lily's room. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small, clear plastic bag. Inside it was a piece of paper folded several times. It was tucked into the window frame, probably been there for years. I left it because it wasn't my place to do anything with it, and I figured whoever eventually moved in here should be the one to decide what to do with it. Clara took the bag, looked at it. What is it? She said. Open it and see, Joe said gently. She unsealed the bag and unfolded the paper carefully. It was a child's drawing crayon, faded, the colors bled together in places from what might have been water damage. 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands. Above them, in a child's unsteady print, me and Mama, our house. Clara stared at it. She did not know whose it was. She did not know the child who had drawn it, or when or why it had been left in the window frame of an empty house. She would never know. Some things you never know. She folded it back up carefully. Lily, she said. Her voice was entirely steady. She was still proud of how steady her voice could be. Lily looked up from her book. Come here a minute. Lily came and stood beside her, and Clara showed her the drawing. Lily looked at it for a long time with her evaluating eyes. Who drew that? Lily said. Someone who lived here before. A kid. Yes. Lily looked at it for another moment. Are we going to keep it? Yes, Clara said. We're going to keep it. Where are we going to put it? Clara looked at the walls of the front room, at the space above the window where the light came in. Right there, she said. Lily looked at the spot, nodded. Good, she said. That's a good spot. And she went back to her book. Joe stood up, his knees cracking with the sound of 38 years of construction sites. He cleared his throat once and went back to work without saying anything, which was exactly right. Clara sat with the drawing in her hands and thought about all the people who had passed through this house, who had called it home, who had pressed their lives into its walls. She thought about the child who drew 2 stick figures and wrote, Our house, in unsteady crayon. She thought about all the things a house is before it becomes yours and all the things it becomes after. She thought about Marcus pressing glow-in-the-dark stars to a ceiling with his thumb. She was going to get more of those stars. She was going to fill that ceiling in the east-facing room with them, every kind. They had a whole galaxy of them, until Lily could lie in her bed and look up and see something bright. At 7 that evening, Hank Sullivan called for the second time. He had been discharged from the hospital that afternoon against the recommendation of his attending physician, according to what Donna had texted Griffin, who had texted Billy, who had mentioned it to Clara with the careful neutrality of a man reporting information without editorializing. The hospital recommendation had been for another 2 days. Hank had lasted 36 hours and then signed the discharge papers and gone home to Donna's house because he refused to stay in a place that smelled like that for one more night. You're home, Clara said when she answered. I'm at Donna's, Hank said. She's been feeding me soup. A pause. Store-bought, not as good. Nothing's as good when you're not starving, Clara said. He made that sound, the almost laugh. She was beginning to understand it as his particular brand of acknowledgement, the sound he made when something was true, and he recognized it but wasn't ready to make it a full moment. Griffin tells me you signed the papers, he said this morning. And you're at the house now. Joe's got 12 men in it. They're doing the electrical panel tonight. He says we'll have heat by tomorrow evening. Joe is the best, Hank said. I've known him 20 years. He built the addition on the clubhouse. Did it in 4 days. A pause. He's going to take good care of that house. He already is. The line was quiet for a moment. Outside, she could hear the workers' voices, the specific rhythmic sounds of construction, the occasional sharp crack of something being removed and replaced. It was not peaceful exactly, but it was purposeful, and purposeful had its own comfort. Clara, Hank said. Yes. I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Not the polite version, the truth. Okay. Are you okay with all of this? The house, the men, Griffin, all of it? Are you actually okay with it? Or are you doing that thing where you accept because you don't feel like you have the right to push back? The question landed with a precision that she had not expected, and she took a moment before she answered because he had asked for the truth and she owed him that. Both, she said. Honestly, it's both. I'm genuinely okay with it, and there's a part of me that's still waiting for it to cost something, waiting for the thing I haven't seen yet. She paused. But I looked at Lily standing in that bedroom with her eyes closed, saying she was checking if it felt right, and I decided that if it costs something, I'll deal with it then. And if it doesn't, I'll just... She stopped. I'll just let it be what it is. Hank was quiet. Good, he said finally. That's the right answer. You said you wanted the truth? I did. That was it. He shifted on his end. She could hear it, the slight sound of a man with a broken collarbone adjusting his position and regretting it. I'm going to come by the house when I'm able, when I'm back on my feet. Not to check on it, anything. Just, I want to see it. You're welcome anytime, Clara said. Donna will probably come first. She's already told me she's going to bring food. Tell her the soup was perfect. She knows. A pause. She made the same recipe for 30 years, our mother's recipe. Another pause softer. She made it the night my son died. Clara held the phone and didn't say anything. She just held it and let him have the space around the sentence, which was the right thing. There was nothing to say that was adequate, and she was not going to say anything inadequate. Sorry, Hank said after a moment. Don't be. I don't usually, he stopped. Hospital does something to you, makes you loose at the edges. That's all right. My son's name was Tyler, Hank said. He was 19. He was going to be something. I don't know what. Something good. He said it simply without performance, without the carefully managed grief of a man who has explained it to people before. Just the raw sentence of a father. He would have liked you. He would have liked Lily. Clara closed her eyes for a moment. Tell me about him sometime, she said. Not tonight, but sometime. Yeah, Hank said. Maybe I will. The line was quiet again, a comfortable quiet, this time the quiet of two people who have been through something together and don't need to fill the air with anything. Get some sleep, Hank, Clara said. Let Donna feed you. She's going to feed me whether I let her or not. Then don't fight it. Yes, ma'am, he said. He hung up, and Clara sat in her folding chair in the front room of the house on Clement Street and listened to the workers in the walls, and above her and below her all those purposeful sounds of men taking something broken and making it whole again, and she felt something she hadn't felt in 23 nights in a Ford Taurus under a bridge. She felt for the first time in a very long time that she was somewhere she was supposed to be. Not somewhere she'd landed, not somewhere she'd ended up, somewhere she was supposed to be, as in chosen as in arrived at through a specific series of events that she would not undo, even if she could, as in this is the place on the other side of the worst of it. Lily came and climbed into her lap at 8 o'clock, which she hadn't done in months. The car had been too cramped for it, too cold for it, too fraught for the particular innocence of a child climbing into her mother's lap just because she wanted to, and put her head against Clara's shoulder and fell asleep within 4 minutes, with the book still open in her hands. Clara held her and didn't move. Billy came by at 9 to say the electrical panel was done and the heating system would be operational by noon tomorrow, and the crew was wrapping for the night. He stood in the doorway of the front room and looked at Clara with Lily asleep in her lap and said nothing for a moment. Then he said, You okay here tonight? You can go back to the Taurus if you'd rather. We're staying, Clara said. He nodded. There's sleeping bags in the truck. Joe always keeps them for overnight job sites. I'll get them. Billy, he stopped. Thank you, she said. Not for the sleeping bags, for all of it, from the beginning. Billy looked at her for a moment with that hard face that wasn't cruel, but was worked in and permanent and entirely honest. My mother's name was Trine, he said. She was 31 when nobody helped her. He put his hand on the door frame, a brief gesture, just contact. Sleep well, Clara. He went and got the sleeping bags and laid them out without waking Lily, and then he left, and the house settled into the particular quiet of a place where work has been done and rest is next, and tomorrow is going to be different from today. Clara laid Lily down into the sleeping bag and tucked it around her and sat back on her heels and looked at her daughter's face in the dark slack and complete and entirely at peace. She took out her phone and looked at the photograph of Marcus, the one in the hospital, the good day, the laughter and the light, and she held it for a long moment. We're okay, she said quietly. Not to the room, not to the dark. To him. She put the phone away and got into her own sleeping bag and looked up at the ceiling of the front room of the house on Clement Street. Tomorrow they would have heat. Tomorrow was already better than today. And the day after that would be better still. And the day after that, and this was not naivety, and it was not delusion. It was the informed belief of a woman who had survived the hardest thing and come out the other side into a house with 4 walls and a door and 12 men who had given their Thursday to make it real. She closed her eyes. Outside, Detroit kept going. The way Detroit always kept going through cold and history, in the specific stubbornness of a city that has been broken and rebuilt so many times it has stopped being surprised by either. And inside a house on Clement Street, a mother and her daughter slept on sleeping bags on the floor of a room that would be theirs in a home that was becoming itself in a life that was not over. It was beginning. Clara Bennett closed her eyes and let it begin. The heat came on at 11:43 in the morning. Clara knew the exact time because she was watching the clock on her phone when it happened. She had been watching it the way you watch something you've been promised and almost believe in, but need to see with your own eyes before you can fully commit to believing. And then the furnace in the basement made a sound, a deep settling sound, like something large exhaling after holding its breath for a very long time, and warm air began to move through the house. Lily felt it before Clara did. She was sitting on the floor of the kitchen with her library books, and she looked up from the page and turned her face toward the ceiling vent, and her whole expression changed, not dramatically, not with the performance of a child who has been told to be grateful, but with something quieter and more fundamental, the expression of a body that has been cold for 23 days and is only now in this moment understanding that it doesn't have to be anymore. "Mama," she said. "I know," Clara said. "It's warm." "I know." Lily looked at the vent for another moment. Then she closed her book and stood up and walked to the center of the kitchen and stood directly under the vent with her arms at her sides and her eyes closed and let the warm air move over her. Clara watched her daughter stand in the first real heat they had felt in 23 days and felt something break open in her chest, not painfully. Nothing like pain, but the way ice breaks open in spring, the way something solid becomes liquid and moves again. She pressed her hand flat against her sternum and breathed. Joe appeared in the kitchen doorway. He took one look at Lily standing under the vent with her eyes closed, and one look at Clara's face, and turned around and went back to whatever he had been doing without saying a word. 38 years of construction had apparently taught him exactly when a room needed to be left alone. By noon, the crew had expanded. She heard them before she saw them. More trucks on Clement Street, more voices, and when she went to the front window, she counted 4 new vehicles that hadn't been there yesterday. Joe was outside directing the new arrivals with the economy of motion of a man who has explained things so many times that he has reduced every instruction to its minimum necessary words. He pointed and men moved. Things got done. Billy found her at the window. "Joe called in the roofing team," he said. "Weather windows closing. There's snow in the forecast for Sunday. If the roof doesn't get done today, and tomorrow it waits another week, and the house can't be properly insulated until the roof is sealed." He looked at her. "It's going to be loud." "I grew up in Detroit," Clara said. "I know what loud is." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." At 1 in the afternoon, Griffin arrived. He came in through the back door, the kitchen with a woman Clara hadn't met, and 2 large bags that turned out to contain enough food to feed everyone working the site. The woman was introduced as Patricia Griffin's wife, and she was the kind of woman whose presence organized a room without her seeming to try. She was 60 maybe, with her hair pinned up and work clothes on, and the particular efficient warmth of a person who feeds people as an act of love and does not make a ceremony of it. Patricia looked at Clara for exactly 2 seconds and then said, "You're smaller than I expected," and started unpacking food. "I get that a lot," Clara said. "Griffin said you turned down money twice." "I did." "Good." Patricia opened a container, and the smell that came out was extraordinary. "Sit down, eat something. You look like you've been running on coffee and stubbornness for a week." "3 weeks," Clara said. "Sit down." Clara sat down. Lily materialized from somewhere. She had a talent for appearing wherever food was, and Patricia looked at her and said, "You must be Lily." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you like cornbread?" Lily's eyes went to the container Patricia was opening. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've never had it." Patricia stopped what she was doing and looked at Lily with an expression that Clara recognized as the specific expression of a woman who has decided something without making an announcement about it. "Well," Patricia said, "that is something we are going to fix right now." She gave Lily the first piece. Lily ate it standing up, both hands, and the expression on her face when the taste hit her was the most purely unguarded thing Clara had seen in months. "It's good," Lily said, with considerable understatement. "I know it is," Patricia said. Griffin sat across from Clara at the card table while Patricia managed the food distribution with the efficiency of a military quartermaster. He had the look of a man who had slept well, which Clara found mildly resenting, given that she had slept on a sleeping bag on a floor. But she was in a house and the heat was on, and she could not find it in herself to hold the resentment for more than a moment. "News station called again this morning," he said without preamble. Clara set down her fork. "What did they want?" "They found out about the renovation crew. Somebody drove past, saw the trucks, made some calls." He looked at her steadily. "They want a comment. Derek sent a second notice." They acknowledged it again. "Are they going to run a story anyway?" "Probably." Griffin laced his fingers on the table. "Derek says there are ways to get ahead of it. If you want to control the narrative, you do it before they do. A statement, nothing more. You don't have to appear on camera, don't have to give an interview. Just a written statement through Derek that tells the story the way it actually happened, instead of the way a news desk will reconstruct it from property records and street interviews." Clara thought about this. "What would the statement say, Everyon?" "Whatever you want it to be." Griffin paused. "Derek's suggestion, and it's only a suggestion, is something simple. That a woman in difficult circumstances helped a stranger in need. That the stranger's community responded in kind. That this is what communities do." "That's what happened," Clara said. "That's what happened," Griffin agreed. She picked up her fork again, ate a bite, thought about it. "Let Derek draft it," she said. "I'll read it before it goes anywhere." Griffin nodded. "One more thing. Hank wants to come today." Clara looked up. "He called me this morning," Griffin said. "Said he was going stir-crazy at Donna's. Said he wanted to see the house." A pause. "Well, I told him it was your call." "How's his shoulder?" "Donna says he's in pain and lying about how much." "Of course he is," Clara said. "Tell him he can come." Griffin texted someone, Donna probably, and put his phone down, and they ate in the comfortable silence of people who have covered the necessary ground and don't need to fill the rest with noise. Hank arrived at 2:15. He came in Donna's car, not on a motorcycle, which was clearly costing him something in dignity that he was paying with gritted teeth. His left arm was in a sling, and he had the specific, careful posture of a man whose body is doing things without permission, and he is managing it by sheer force of not acknowledging it. Donna came in behind him with the expression of a woman who has spent the last 48 hours watching someone be stoic about a broken collarbone and has arrived at a state of exhausted acceptance. Hank stopped in the doorway of the front room and looked at the house. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at the walls being worked on, at the sleeping bags still folded in the corner, at the card table with the cornbread on it, at Clara standing in the middle of it. "It's good bones," he said finally. "Joe says so," Clara agreed. He looked at her. The silver-gray eyes were clearer than they had been on the concrete under the overpass. Present, sharp, the eyes of a man who is fully in the room. "You look better," he said. "Then what?" "Than a woman sitting in 11-degree weather on a highway overpass." "Low bar," she said. He almost smiled. "Your girl around?" Lily appeared from the kitchen, cornbread in hand. She looked at Hank with frank, unself-conscious appraisal. The arm in the sling, the stitches still visible at his hairline, the sheer size of him filling the doorway. "You're the one Mama gave the soup to," she said. "That's me," Hank said. "Does your shoulder hurt?" "Not much." "Donna says you're lying about that." Donna from behind him. "I did say that, yeah." Hank looked at Clara with an expression that said very clearly that this was not what he had expected, and he was not entirely sure how to proceed. Clara looked back at him with an expression that said, "Welcome to my life." "It hurts some, Diana," Hank said to Lily, "but I'll be okay." Lily nodded, satisfied with the honesty. "Mama gives really good soup," she said. "She makes it when people are sad or sick. She made it when Daddy got sick a lot." A beat. "Daddy died." "I know," Hank said. "I'm sorry about your dad." "He was really good," Lily said matter-of-factly, the way 6-year-olds discuss the irreversible with clarity and without avoidance. "He pressed stars on my ceiling. I don't have a ceiling here yet. I mean, I have one, but it doesn't have stars." Hank looked at Clara. "We're working on it," Clara said. Hank turned back to Lily. He looked at her for a moment with those silver eyes, and something moved through his face, the same thing that had moved through it on the concrete when he understood what Clara had given him, that shift beneath the surface, that thing that happened to him when the armor found a gap it wasn't expecting. "I'll get you stars," he said. Lily looked at him very seriously. "The glow-in-the-dark kind, whatever kind you want." "The glow-in-the-dark kind," Lily said firmly. "That was the kind Daddy used." "Then that's the kind," Hank said. Lily finished her cornbread and went back to the kitchen. Hank stood in the doorway for a moment longer, and Clara watched him collect himself, watched him find the edges of whatever had just happened and press them back into place. Not because he was ashamed of it, but because he was a man who was not accustomed to being opened up in a front room in the middle of the afternoon, and he needed a moment. "Thank you for letting me come," he said. "Thank you for making the call from the hospital," she said. "To Griffin. That was the one that started all of this." He shook his head slowly. "The one that started all of this was you," he said, "on that overpass. Everything else is just what happened because of that." She looked at him. "We both know that's not entirely true." "Maybe not entirely," he admitted, "but mostly." He moved into the room and found a chair and sat in it with the careful deliberateness of a man managing pain who has decided not to manage it visibly. And Clara went back to the card table, and they spent the next 2 hours in the house together, not talking much, just occupying the same space while the work happened around them, which felt natural in a way that she had not expected and did not try to analyze. At 4 o'clock, Derek called. "The statement's drafted," he said. "I'm sending it to you now. Read it and tell me what to change." She read it on her phone. It was 8 sentences. It was clean and precise and said exactly what Griffin had described. "A woman helped a stranger, a community responded. This is what communities do." It did not mention Lily by name. It did not mention the address of the house. It mentioned Clara's first name only and described her as a Detroit resident. "Change one thing," she said. "What?" "The last sentence. It says, 'This is an example of what communities can do.' Change can to do, present tense." A pause. "Done." "Why?" "Because can is a possibility," Clara said. "This already happened. It's not a possibility, it's a fact." Derek was quiet for a moment. "That's a good distinction," he said. "Send it." He sent it at 4:15. By 5 o'clock, it had been picked up by 2 local stations and 1 regional outlet. By 6, it was on a Detroit community news blog with 300 shares. By 7, Griffin called to say that the news station that had been pushing for an interview had backed off entirely, apparently satisfied with the statement, and that was the end of the media situation. Clara put her phone down and looked at the ceiling of the front room and thought about how a single sentence in present tense could be the difference between a story about what people might do and a story about what people did. Small words, enormous weight. Joe came to find her at 5:30 with the look of a man who has good news and is enjoying the fact that he has it. "Roof is 60% done," he said. "We're going to push through until we lose the light. Tomorrow morning we finish weather holds, and then the insulation crew can go in. By end of day tomorrow, this house is sealed." He paused. "Tight as a drum." "Joe," Clara said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you here? You don't know me. None of this is your—" "Griffin asked me," Joe said. "I know, but you could have said no." Joe looked at her for a moment. He had the patient quality of a man who has thought about things long enough that he doesn't need extra time to think about them anymore. "My wife left me 12 years ago," he said. "Took my kids. I was drinking. I was not being who I needed to be, and she made the right call. It took me 3 years to get straight. When I got straight, I had nothing." He looked at the wall. "Griffin gave me work, not charity, work. He paid me fairly, gave me a crew vouch for me when nobody would vouch for me. Within 2 years, I had my license back and my own business." He paused. "So when Griffin calls me, I come." He looked at Clara directly. "And when I got here and saw what this was, what you did, what he's doing, what this whole thing is, I would have come anyway." Even if Griffin hadn't called. He straightened. Back to the roof. He left, and Clara sat with his story the way she was learning to sit with all of it, not trying to make it into something larger than it was, not trying to minimize it either, just letting it be what it was. People who had been in pieces, putting themselves back together, and then turning around to help someone else do the same. a chain of it going back and back and back further than she could see, further than any of them probably knew. She thought about what she would do when she was on her feet, when she had the bar and the house and Lily, in school, and some margin in her life, the margin she hadn't had in so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to have anything left over. What she would do with the leftover part. She already knew. She had known since the moment Patricia had handed Lily a piece of cornbread and said, "That's something we're going to fix right now." She didn't know the shape of it yet. She didn't know what form it would take, but she knew the direction. At 7 in the evening, a truck arrived on Clement Street that nobody had been expecting. Clara heard it pull up, heard the engine, and then heard it cut out, and then heard the sound of several people getting out, and then heard Billy's voice through the front window saying something she couldn't make out. She went to look. There were 5 men outside. 4 of them she didn't recognize. The 5th was a man she had seen at the overpass the first night, one of the riders who had lifted the bike off Hank's arm with that efficient, coordinated precision. They were unloading things from the truck, large things wrapped in moving blankets. She went to the door. "What is this?" she asked Billy. Billy looked faintly pleased in the contained way that was apparently his version of delighted. "Club took a collection," he said, "put out the word 2 days ago. People contributed what they had." He nodded toward the truck. "Furniture, real stuff. Some of it's new, some of it's good used. All of it's been checked." Clara stared at the truck. "There's a bed for your daughter," Billy said. "Full-size frame and mattress new. There's a kitchen table and chairs, a couch, a dresser, some other things." He paused. "The bedroom set for the master is coming tomorrow. One of the guys in the chapter is a furniture maker, actual cabinet maker trained. He's been in his shop for 2 days. He looked at her. He wanted to make it himself, said it was the right thing to do." Clara looked at the moving blankets coming off the truck. "A cabinet maker," she said. "Earl," Billy confirmed. "He's 64 years old and he hasn't made a bedroom set from scratch in 15 years. And he's been in that shop since Wednesday morning." He paused. He cried when Griffin told him the situation. "Don't tell Earl I told you that." Clara pressed her lips together. "I won't tell Earl," she said. She helped them bring things in. Not because she needed to, but because she could not stand to watch without participating, because her hands needed to be part of it, because participation was dignity, and she had worked too hard at dignity to give it up now, even in the middle of receiving something. She carried the lighter things and directed the heavier ones, and Lily ran alongside all of it with the electric focus of a child watching her world be built in real time. "That's my table," Lily announced when the kitchen table came through the door. "That's our table." "It is," Clara said. "And that's the couch." "That's the couch." Lily went and sat on the couch with the ceremony of someone taking an official position. She sat with her back straight and her hands on her knees and looked around the room. "It's good," she said. "It's a good couch." "Highest endorsement," Billy said quietly to Clara. "She has standards," Clara said. Hank watched the furniture come in from his chair in the corner, his good arm resting on his knee, and Clara caught him watching Lily sit on the couch, and she caught the expression on his face before he could reassemble it, and she looked away quickly because what she had seen was too private for her to be looking at directly. It was grief and something like repair happening simultaneously on a man's face, the specific expression of a person who has been missing something for a long time and has, just in the form of a 6-year-old sitting on a donated couch with her back straight and her hands on her knees, found something that doesn't replace it, but sits in the neighborhood of it and makes the absence a little less total. Tyler, she thought, 19 years old, was going to be something. She did not say anything. She went back to carrying things. At 8:30, when the truck was empty and the furniture was in and the crew was wrapping for the night, Donna produced a soup pot. Clara didn't understand at first what she was looking at. Donna came in from the car carrying it, and Clara saw it and thought it was a pot of soup, thought Donna had brought dinner, and started to say something grateful, and then she saw that it was her pot. The same battered pot from the Ford Taurus, the one she had carried across the concrete in 11-degree weather and pressed to Hank's lips in the dark. It had been cleaned and polished until it looked like something transformed from what it had been, still itself, but better, and on its side was a small rectangle of metal riveted in place, engraved with words. Donna handed it to her. Clara read the engraving. "Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. You saved my life, Clara. Now we save yours." She stood with the pot in both hands and read it twice. The room had gone quiet around her. She hadn't noticed the quiet arriving, but it was there, all the people who were in the house, the ones still packing up tools and putting things in order. They had all stilled the way people still when something is happening that deserves stillness. She looked up at Hank. He was looking at her from his chair with those silver eyes that didn't flinch and didn't demand, just looked. "I had it made at the shop where we do our metalwork," he said. "The man who did it, Tommy, he's been doing our metalwork for 15 years. He did it overnight. Wouldn't take anything for it." Hank paused, said it was an honor. Clara looked at the pot in her hands, at the words on it, at the weight of what they held, not just the metal, but the 23 nights in the Taurus and the $4.62, and the bowl she had carried across the dark to a stranger, because it was the right thing, the only thing, the thing that was so obvious in the moment that she had not understood until much later what it had cost her or what it had started. "I don't know how to do this," she said. Her voice was entirely steady. She was still proud of it, still marveling at what she was capable of holding. "Do what," Donna said. "Receive this." She looked at them, at Donna and Hank and Billy and Griffin and Patricia and Joe and Derek and all the rest of them. "I know how to give. I've always known how to give. I don't know how to stand here and—" She stopped. "Yes, you do," Hank said quietly. She looked at him. "You're doing it right now," he said. "Standing there, holding it. That's the whole thing. You don't have to do anything else." The stone in her sternum that had been there for 8 months, heavy and permanent and aching, shifted one final time. Not gone. She did not expect it to be gone. Marcus was not gone, and the grief of him was not gone, and the 2 years of impossible wait were not gone. But the stone had moved from the place where it had been pressing, from the place where it had made it hard to breathe, into somewhere lower and more settled, somewhere she could carry it without it carrying her. She put the pot down on the kitchen table carefully. "Thank you," she said, and this time she let everything behind it come through. Let the 2 words hold the whole 23 nights. The soup, the concrete, the $4.62 Lily, standing under the heat vent with her eyes closed, the 12-page application, glow-in-the-dark stars, and a cabinet maker in his shop for 2 days, and a furniture truck, and a plaque that said, "Loyalty makes you family." "Thank you," she said, "all of it, all of them." Nobody said, "You're welcome." Nobody said, "Don't mention it." They just received it, the way she was learning to receive, by standing still and letting it be what it was. Lily appeared at her side, looked at the pot, read the words slowly the way a 6-year-old reads when she is reading something that matters. "Loyalty makes you family," Lily read aloud. "Yes," Clara said. Lily looked at Hank. "Are you our family now?" The room was completely still. Hank looked at Lily for a long moment. His jaw worked once. He looked at Clara, a brief look, fast, real, and then back at Lily. "If you'll have us," he said. Lily considered this with the gravity of a small diplomat conducting official proceedings. "Okay," she said, "but you have to come to dinner sometimes." "Deal," Hank said, "and you have to bring the stars." "Already ordered them," he said. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went and sat back on the couch. The room exhaled. The next 2 weeks moved the way things move when they are finally moving in the right direction, faster than expected, full of small moments that would have been invisible in easier times, but were now vivid and specific in hers. Sharon called on Monday to sort out the paperwork for the job, and they talked for 40 minutes, and Clara realized halfway through that she was laughing, actually laughing at something Sharon said about the temp staff who had been covering her position. And the laugh surprised her with how natural it was, how fully it came, like something returning from a long way away. Derek finalized the property transfer documents on Wednesday. Clara signed them at a table in his office, with Griffin sitting across from her and Billy standing by the door. And when it was done, Derek slid the folder across the table and said, "That's yours. The house is yours. Triple redundancy email, physical copy in a safe place. I keep a copy in the file." Clara looked at the documents, looked at her name on them. "Mine," she said, just to hear it. "Yours," Derek confirmed. Earl delivered the bedroom set on Thursday. He was 64 years old with hands that had been building things for 40 years, and he brought it in himself with one helper, and he set it up piece by piece in the master bedroom with the care of a man for whom the work is never just the work. When it was assembled, he stood back and looked at it, and Clara stood beside him and looked at it. "Cherry," he said. "The wood, it's cherry. It'll last 100 years. "It's beautiful," Clara said. Earl cleared his throat. My wife left me a cherry wood jewelry box when she passed, he said. 14 years ago, I made it for her when we were first married. Every time I work in Cherry, I think about her. He looked at the bedroom set. I was thinking about her the whole time I made this. He looked at Clara. I thought you should know that. I don't know why. Just thought you should. I'm glad you told me, Clara said. He nodded once, put his cap back on, and left. Clara stood in the room with the cherry wood bedroom set that had been made by a 64-year-old man thinking about his dead wife, and she thought about Marcus pressing stars to a ceiling, and about soup heated on a camp stove, and about what people carry and what they build from it. She went and found the packet of glow-in-the-dark stars that Hank had sent over 2 days earlier, a full bag more than enough for 2 ceilings, and she carried them upstairs to the east-facing room, and she stood on the step stool she'd borrowed from Joe, and she pressed them to the ceiling one by one, the way Marcus had pressed them with her thumb, each one deliberate, each one placed. She did it for 45 minutes. She did the whole ceiling. When she was done, she turned off the light. The room lit up. Dozens and dozens of green-white stars on the ceiling of an east-facing bedroom in a house on Clement Street in Detroit, Michigan, glowing in the dark. She stood there alone and looked up at them and thought about Marcus saying, you write down the thing you want even when you can't see the path to it, because the writing is how the path starts to appear. She had not known on that concrete in 11 degrees that this was where the path went. She had not known any of it. The hospital call, the 48 hours, Derek's triple redundancy, Earl's cherrywood, Billy's mother named Irene, the pot with the plaque, the stars. She had known one thing, one only, that the right thing done without condition is its own kind of path, that you don't need to see the destination to take the first step, that a bowl of soup given in the dark to a stranger is not the end of something, it is the beginning. Lily ran upstairs at 7 o'clock to go to bed and stopped in the doorway of her room and looked up. She stood perfectly still for 30 seconds. Then she turned to Claire in the hallway with her face full of something that had no name and didn't need one. He did it, she said. He sent the stars, Clara said. I pressed them up. Lily looked at the ceiling again. Then she went and lay down in her bed, her real bed, full-sized frame and mattress, new, and she pulled the blanket up and she looked at the ceiling above her. Mama, she said, yeah, this is what I knew it would feel like. Clara leaned in the doorway. What do you mean? When I was checking, in the empty room with my eyes closed. Lily looked at the stars. This is what I knew it would feel like. Clara looked at her daughter lying in a real bed, in a real room, in a real house, looking up at the glow-in-the-dark stars that a man had ordered, because a little girl asked him to, because her father used the same kind, because a bowl of soup on a concrete slab in 11 degrees had started something that neither of them had seen the shape of until it was already built. Good, Clara said. That's good, baby. She kissed her daughter's forehead and turned the light off and stood in the hallway and listened to the house around her, the small sounds of it, the settling and the breathing of it, the specific sound of a place that has been empty and is now finally full. She went downstairs and picked up the soup pot from the kitchen table and held it in both hands and read the words again. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. She set it back down in the center of the table, not in a cabinet, not on a shelf, in the center where it could be seen, where it was first, where it was always going to be, the beginning of the whole story right there on the table where everything started. She sat down. Outside on Clement Street, Detroit did what Detroit does, kept going, kept building, kept surviving the winter the way it always had, through stubbornness and solidarity, in the specific grace of people who have decided that going through hard things alone is a choice, not an inevitability. Inside the house, a woman sat at a kitchen table and breathed. In a room upstairs, a little girl slept under a sky full of stars. And in the center of the table, a battered soup pot with a brass plaque said everything that needed to be said about what a human being is capable of when she chooses without hesitation, without condition, without knowing what it will cost or what it will start to do the right thing. Clara Bennett had given away her last bowl of soup in the dark, and the dark had given her back the world.